Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Naruto was the Sharingan god, a being of the lantern. Core Naruto X star Sapphire, DC Comics. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Violet Awakening. The dream came again. Violent and beautiful, like shattered stained glass rearranging itself in the dark. Naruto stood alone at the center of an endless void that pulsed with colors he couldn't name. Above him, countless eyes opened in the darkness, each bearing a familiar spiral pattern yet somehow wrong, too vibrant, too alive. "What are you trying to tell me?" Naruto whispered to the emptiness. The largest eye blinked, its iris shifting from crimson to deep violet. When it spoke, the voice resonated not in Naruto's ears but through his bones. "You are more than vessel, more than savior. You are the bridge between that which has always been divided." Naruto woke gasping, his skin damp with sweat despite the cool spring air filtering through his apartment window. Dawn painted Konoha in hues of amber and gold, the reconstructed village peaceful in the early morning light. 3 years since the war had ended, and still these dreams persisted, becoming more vivid, more urgent with each passing month. He pressed his palms against his eyes, a habit formed from weeks of strange pressure building behind them. Even Kurama had grown concerned. "Something's changing in you, kid," the fox had rumbled days earlier from the depths of their shared consciousness. "Something even I don't understand." Naruto splashed cold water on his face and studied his reflection. At 19, his features had sharpened, jawline more defined, shoulders broader. The whisker marks on his cheeks seemed to have deepened, and sometimes, just sometimes, he thought he caught flickers of something unfamiliar in his blue eyes. A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts. "Naruto, Lady Tsunade wants us 10 minutes ago." Sakura's voice carried easily through the door. "And she specifically said if you're late again, she'll assign you D-rank missions for a month." Coming. He quickly donned his standard issue Jonin uniform, fastened his customized black and orange haori, and grabbed a piece of toast before heading out. Sakura waited outside, arms crossed but expression softening at the sight of him. At 19, she'd grown into her role as one of Konoha's elite medical nin. Her pink hair now cropped short for practicality, her green eyes sharp and observant. "You look terrible," she said bluntly, falling into step beside him. "Still not sleeping? That obvious, huh?" Naruto grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just weird dreams. Nothing to worry about." Sakura studied him with professional assessment. "Your chakra seems different lately. More turbulent. Have you talked to Tsunade-sama about it?" "It's nothing," he deflected, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "Probably just restlessness. Been a while since we've had any real action." They made the way through Konoha's bustling streets, citizens calling out greetings to the hero of the Fourth Great Ninja War. Naruto returned their waves with genuine warmth, his natural charisma drawing people to him despite his distracted state. The village had been rebuilt stronger than before, new buildings incorporating traditional architecture with modern innovations, the faces of the Hokage monument including Kakashi's likeness alongside Tsunade's. Sakura noted how Naruto's gaze lingered on the sky. "What are you looking for up there?" "Not sure," he admitted. "Just feels like something's coming." The Hokage tower buzzed with the usual morning activity, Chunin delivering reports, Jonin receiving assignments, administrative staff organizing the countless details required to run a hidden village. Tsunade waited in her office with Kakashi and Shikamaru, the former looking characteristically bored, the latter studying a map with intense concentration. "You're late," Tsunade said without looking up from her paperwork. "Sorry, Granny," Naruto's childhood nickname for her persisted despite her numerous threats. "What's so urgent?" Tsunade gestured to Shikamaru, who tapped several marked locations on the map. "We've been tracking unusual chakra disturbances along the Land of Fire's northern border," Shikamaru explained, his lazy drawl belying the sharpness in his eyes. "At first, we thought it might be remnants of Kagaya's chakra or perhaps some experimental jutsu from another village. But," Naruto prompted, "but it's not chakra, at least, not entirely." Kakashi stepped forward, his visible eye creased in thought. "I investigated personally. Whatever this energy is, it doesn't behave like any chakra we've encountered. It resonates differently. Naruto felt a strange tingle at the base of his skull. Like it's alive somehow. 4 pairs of eyes turned to him with varying degrees of surprise. Yes, Kakashi said slowly. That's exactly what it feels like. How did you know? Naruto shrugged, uncomfortable with their scrutiny. Just a guess. Well, your guess aligns with what our sensors have reported, Tsunade interjected, leaning forward. And that's why you're being assigned to investigate. Your unique sensory abilities as a sage might pick up something our conventional methods are missing. You want me to go into sage mode near these disturbances? With caution, Tsunade emphasized. Kakashi and Sakura will accompany you. Observe, gather information, but do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Naruto nodded, a familiar excitement building despite his recent unease. Action, purpose, something to focus on besides dreams and pressure behind his eyes. When do we leave? Immediately, Kakashi answered, already moving toward the door. Pack for 3 days. We'll meet at the north gate in 30 minutes. As they left the office, Shikamaru fell into step beside Naruto, voice lowered. There's something else. The villagers near the disturbances have reported seeing lights in the sky. Violet lights. Something cold settled in Naruto's stomach. Violet, like the eye in his dreams. What do you make of it? He asked. Shikamaru shook his head. Troublesome. That's what. Just be careful out there. Halfway across the universe, Carol Ferris stood alone on an observation deck of the star Sapphire Central Command. Gazing into the endless expanse of space. The violet crystal at her throat pulsed in time with her heartbeat, its light reflecting in her dark eyes. 3 years since she had fully embraced her role as a star sapphire. And still the power of love sometimes felt too vast to comprehend. Unusual for you to be so contemplative, Ferris. Carol didn't turn at the familiar voice. Fatality, once her enemy, now her sister in the star sapphire core, moved to stand beside her, her dark skin luminous in the violet light that surrounded them. Something's calling to me, Carol said quietly. Something distant, yet familiar. Fatality's expression sharpened with interest. A new bearer for the violet light. No, Carol shook her head, trying to articulate the sensation. It's more like an echo. As if the violet light itself is responding to something beyond our known spectrum. The Guardians monitor the emotional spectrum closely. If there were fluctuations, the Guardians don't know everything, Carol interrupted. Her corporate executive assertiveness showing through her star sapphire persona. And this isn't like anything I've felt before. She pressed a hand to the crystal at her throat, focusing her will through it. The violet energy responded, forming a 3-dimensional map of the universe. With practiced precision, Carol manipulated the projection, searching for the source of the disturbance. There, she finally said, highlighting a distant sector. The energy signature is faint but growing stronger. Fatality studied the coordinates with a frown. That's impossible. There's nothing in that sector but empty space. Exactly. Carol's eyes narrowed, which means either our maps are wrong, or something is crossing into our universe that doesn't belong here. Fatality finished the thought, her expression grave. Carol's crystal flared suddenly, pulsing with such intensity that both women stepped back in alarm. The projection before them distorted, the empty sector now showing a swirling mass of energy unlike anything they had ever seen. By the light, Fatality whispered. What is that? Carol didn't answer immediately, her mind racing through possibilities. Whatever this phenomenon was, the violet light responded to it with unmistakable recognition. Assemble a reconnaissance team, she finally ordered, her voice carrying the authority of her position. I need our fastest ships ready to depart within the hour. The Zamorans will want to be consulted before. I'll handle the Zamorans. Carol's expression brooked no argument. This isn't just curiosity, Fatality. The violet light itself is trying to tell us something, and I intend to find out what. As Fatality departed to carry out her instructions, Carol turned back to the projection, studying the swirling energies with growing unease. Something was coming, or perhaps they were being drawn to something. Either way, the boundaries between worlds were thinning, and love, in all its cosmic power, was responding. The northern forests of the Land of Fire stretched before them, ancient trees rising like sentinels against the afternoon sky. Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura moved swiftly through the canopy, their chakra-enhanced leaps carrying them effortlessly from branch to branch. They had traveled for hours, pushing their pace to reach the disturbance zone before nightfall. Naruto ran point, his senses already stretching outward, searching for anything unusual. The forest felt normal enough, the steady pulse of life energy from plants and animals, the occasional flicker of a wild creature's chakra, but something else lingered at the edges of his perception, like a scent he couldn't quite identify. "We're getting close," Kakashi called from behind him. The last disturbance was reported just beyond the next ridge. They slowed as they approached, caution tempering their advance. The forest had grown unusually quiet, birds and insects falling silent as if sensing something unnatural. "I don't like this," Sakura murmured, her gloved hands flexing instinctively. Naruto nodded in agreement, his body tensing as they cleared the ridge, and froze at the sight before them. A perfect circle of forest, perhaps 50 meters in diameter, had been altered. Trees still stood, but their bark had taken on a crystalline quality, refracting sunlight into prismatic patterns. The ground beneath sparkled with an iridescent sheen, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with barely visible ripples. "What the hell?" Naruto whispered. Kakashi lifted his headband, revealing his Sharingan. "The chakra patterns are. I've never seen anything like this. It's as if the natural energy itself has been transformed." Sakura knelt at the boundary of the circle, careful not to touch the altered ground. "It's not damage, exactly. More like the area has been realigned on a molecular level." Naruto felt a strange pull toward the center of the circle, the pressure behind his eyes intensifying. Without conscious thought, he took a step forward. "Naruto, wait," Kakashi began, but Naruto had already crossed the boundary. The moment his foot touched the transformed ground, energy surged through him, not hostile, but overwhelming, like plunging into a deep current. Colors intensified, sounds sharpened, and the constant background hum of natural chakra that he'd grown accustomed to as a sage suddenly sang with complex harmonies he'd never perceived before. "I'm fine," he called back to his concerned teammates. "It's just different in here. The energy feels alive," Kakashi finished, cautiously joining him. "Like what I felt before, but stronger." Sakura followed, her medical training evident in the careful way she monitored her own body's responses. "My chakra control feels different here, more fluid, less constrained." They moved slowly toward the center of the circle, where the transformative effect seemed strongest. A small clearing opened before them, and at its heart hovered a pulsing mote of violet light, no larger than a marble. "Is that it?" Naruto squinted at the tiny light. "All this from something so small. Size isn't always indicative of power," Kakashi reminded him, especially with unknown entities. Naruto approached the light cautiously, drawn by an inexplicable sense of familiarity. The pressure behind his eyes built until it bordered on pain, but he couldn't look away from the violet glow. "I'm going to try something," he said, his voice distant even to his own ears. "Cover me." Before his companions could protest, Naruto closed his eyes, drawing on the natural energy around him. Sage mode came easily, orange pigmentation spreading around his eyes, but something was different. The natural energy in this place carried unfamiliar currents, wavelengths of power he'd never encountered before. As he opened his eyes, now ringed with orange sage markings, the mode of light pulsed in response, recognition, perhaps even excitement. It began to expand, growing from marble-sized to baseball-sized in seconds. "Naruto," Sakura's voice held warning. "I think you should stop." But he couldn't stop, not when he was finally connecting with whatever had haunted his dreams. The natural energy flowed through him, into him, and with it came that other power, violet, vibrant, and somehow deeply familiar. "It knows me," he murmured, reaching toward the light, "and I think I know it too." His fingertips brushed the violet sphere. The world exploded. Energy cascaded outward in concentric rings of violet light, the force lifting Naruto off his feet and flinging him backward. Kakashi caught him before he could slam into a tree, both of them tumbling to the ground as the forest around them shuddered under the energy wave. "Are you all right?" Kakashi's voice sounded distant through the ringing in Naruto's ears. "I think so." Naruto struggled to focus, his vision blurry. Sakura, I'm here. She appeared beside them, a shallow cut on her cheek already healing thanks to her medical jutsu. What did you do? I just touched it. Naruto blinked rapidly, trying to clear his sight. It was like it was waiting for me. Sakura helped him sit up, her medical chakra already scanning him for injuries. She gasped suddenly, her hands freezing in place. What is it? Kakashi demanded. His eyes, Sakura whispered. Naruto, your eyes. Confused, Naruto touched his face. The sage markings had faded, but the pressure behind his eyes had transformed into a warm, pulsing sensation. What about my eyes? Sakura fumbled in her pack, producing a small mirror. She held it up silently. Naruto's breath caught. His normally blue eyes now shimmered with an inner light, violet energy swirling subtly around the pupils. Not quite Sharingan. There was no Tomo pattern, but something altogether new and strange. That's not possible, Kakashi breathed, his own Sharingan fixed on Naruto's changed eyes. You don't have Uchiha blood. It's not exactly Sharingan, Naruto replied, strangely calm despite the transformation. It's something else, something older. The words came without conscious thought, knowledge bubbling up from somewhere deep within. Before he could explain further, the air above them tore open with a sound like reality itself being ripped apart. All three shinobi leapt to their feet, weapons at ready, as a massive rift appeared in the sky above the clearing. Unlike the controlled dimensional techniques they had encountered before, this portal roiled with chaotic energy. Its edges jagged and unstable. Through the tear in space, they glimpsed another world, gleaming spires of impossible architecture, skies filled with craft unlike any they had seen, and stars arranged in unfamiliar constellations. As that, Sakura began. Another dimension, Kakashi confirmed, his Sharingan analyzing the rift. But unlike any transportation jutsu I've ever seen. Naruto stared upward, his new eyes perceiving layers of energy invisible to others. The rift wasn't just a hole between places, it was a fundamental merging of realities that should have remained separate. Something's coming through, he warned, sensing a shift in the energies. A figure emerged from the rift, a woman descending with the grace of controlled flight, surrounded by a nimbus of violet light. Her form-fitting costume seemed composed of the light itself, shifting and flowing around her like living armor. Dark hair framed a striking face marked by determination and caution. Behind her came others, figures wreathed in different colors, emerald green, sapphire blue, indigo, and more. Each moved with the confidence of power, the lead woman gesturing for them to hold position as she continued her descent alone. Identify yourselves, Kakashi called out, his hand raised in a gesture that was both greeting and warning. The woman in violet hovered 10 feet above them, her eyes widening slightly as she took in the transformed clearing, and then narrowing as her gaze fell on Naruto. The crystal at her throat pulsed violently, resonating with something in Naruto's changed eyes. I am Star Sapphire of the Violet Lantern Corps, she answered, her voice carrying a subtle harmonic quality. And you are interfering with energies beyond your comprehension. Naruto stepped forward, instinct guiding him. I'm Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure. And I think these energies have been trying to reach me. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps even recognition. The violet light around her intensified as she descended further, close enough now that Naruto could see the intelligence in her eyes and the wariness in her posture. Impossible, she murmured, more to herself than to them. The violet light doesn't manifest this way, especially not across dimensional boundaries. Well, it did, Naruto replied with his characteristic directness. And now you're here, and my eyes are different. Your eyes. Her focus sharpened. Let me see them. Before Kakashi or Sakura could intervene, Naruto stepped closer, tilting his face upward to meet her scrutiny. He woman, Star Sapphire, descended until her feet touched the ground, the violet aura around her dimming slightly as she studied him. This isn't possible, she whispered, genuine astonishment breaking through her composed exterior. You're channeling the violet light of love, but without a power ring or lantern. And it's manifesting through your visual organs in a pattern I've never encountered. Love, Naruto repeated, confused. What does love have to do with this? Star Sapphire gestured to the crystal at her throat. The emotional spectrum powers the lantern core, 7 fundamental ions that flow through all sentient life. The violet light represents love in its purest form. From above, one of her companions called down, a man in a green uniform similar to hers, but with a different insignia. Carol, the rift is destabilizing. Whatever you're going to do it fast. The woman, Carol, glanced upward with a frown before returning her attention to Naruto. Your connection to the violet light has somehow punctured the dimensional barrier between our universes. If we don't stabilize it, the consequences could be catastrophic for both worlds. How do we fix it? Naruto asked without hesitation. Carol studied him for a moment, seeming to come to a decision. The resonance between your eyes and my power source created this connection. Perhaps together we can control it. She extended her hand, violet energy coalescing around it. But I warn you, the light of love is powerful and unpredictable. It may show you truths you aren't prepared to face. Naruto glanced at Kakashi and Sakura, both poised to intervene if necessary. He gave them a reassuring nod before turning back to Carol. I've faced worse than truth, he said, taking her offered hand without hesitation. The moment their hands connected, violet energy exploded between them, not violently, but with the force of recognition. Naruto's changed eyes flared with renewed light, and the crystal at Carol's throat responded in kind. Energy spiraled upward from them toward the rift, weaving patterns that seemed to stitch reality back together. But something unexpected happened. Instead of sealing the tear completely, the energy began to stabilize it, transforming the jagged wound into a controlled gateway between worlds. Above them, the other lanterns moved back in alarm as the rift expanded, now a perfect circle of swirling energy connecting two universes. Through their joined hands, Naruto and Carol shared a flash of mutual understanding, memories, emotions, knowledge flowing between them in an instant. He saw her world through her eyes, a universe of wonders and terrors, heroes and villains, powers beyond imagination. She glimpsed his life, the lonely child, the determined warrior, the HEA. That never gave up despite countless reasons to surrender. They broke contact simultaneously, both staggering slightly from the intensity of the connection. What did you do? Carol demanded, though, her tone held more wonder than accusation. Naruto shook his head, equally confused. I don't think I did anything. It was like, the energies knew what they wanted. Above them, the stabilized portal continued to expand, now large enough to encompass the entire clearing. Through it, they could see what appeared to be a vast city unlike anything in the shinobi world, its architecture both alien and beautiful. That's Coast City, Carol said, staring upward. My home. But it shouldn't be visible from here unless the dimensions are merging, Kakashi finished, his analytical mind quickly grasping the implications. Not just connected, but overlapping. From the other side of the portal, shouts of alarm could be heard as the inhabitants of this coast city noticed the fours and strange figures suddenly visible in their sky. We need to contain this, Carol said urgently, activating her crystal. The violet light around her intensified as she rose into the air. Hal, Kyle, we need to establish a perimeter. The other lanterns responded immediately, green energy forming massive constructs that attempted to frame and limit the expanding portal. But the dimensional merger continued unabated, the energies now spreading beyond their ability to contain. Naruto felt a sudden surge of power from within, the pressure behind his eyes no longer painful but insistent. No, edge that wasn't his own filled his mind, understanding of the emotional spectrum, the nature of the lantern powers, the structure of dimensional boundaries. It's too late to stop it, he called to Carol. The worlds are already merging. But maybe we can guide it, make the transition less destructive. Without waiting for a response, Naruto closed his eyes and entered Sage mode once more. This time, when he opened his eyes, the orange pigmentation of the sage combined with the violet energy to create something new, a visual manifestation of power that resembled the Sharingan but with swirling patterns of violet and gold. Chakra flowed from him in visible waves, meeting and intertwining with Carol's violet energy. The lanterns above, sensing the shift in power, adjusted their approach, working with rather than against the merging energies. For several tense minutes, the two worlds continued to overlap, reality itself seeming to flex and strain around them. Then, gradually, the process stabilized. The violent energies calmed, the expanding boundaries slowed, and the two dimensions settled into a new configuration, not fully merged, but permanently connected at multiple points. As the immediate crisis subsided, Naruto released Sage Mode, exhaustion hitting him like a physical blow. He would have fallen if Sakura hadn't caught his arm, supporting him as he struggled to remain standing. "What just happened?" he asked, his vision blurring. Carol descended again, her own power dimmed by the effort she'd expended. The other lanterns landed around them, forming a loose circle, some wary, others curious. "Our worlds have merged, at least partially," Carol explained, fatigue evident in her voice despite her composed expression. "What should have been impossible has somehow happened, and your unique connection to the violet light appears to be at the center of it." One of the green-clad figures stepped forward, a man with brown hair and a confident bearing. "I'm Hal Jordan of the Green Lantern Corps. Whatever just happened here is way outside normal protocol. The Guardians are going to have questions. As will our Hokage," Kakashi replied evenly. "But perhaps introductions and explanations can wait until we've assessed the full extent of whatever this is." A woman in a green uniform similar to Hal's approached, her dark hair framing a face marked by both strength and uncertainty. "I'm Jessica Cruz, also Green Lantern Corps. And I think, whatever this is has already spread beyond this forest." She pointed skyward, where the afternoon sun now shared the sky with unfamiliar stars and what appeared to be two moons, one familiar, one decidedly not. "Two worlds," Sakura murmured. "Existing in the same space." "Not exactly," Carol corrected. "From what I can sense, the merger isn't complete. Certain locations have overlapped completely, while others remain distinct. It's as if our universes are now interwoven rather than fully combined." Naruto straightened, drawing on his seemingly endless reserves of stamina to overcome his exhaustion. "Then we need to figure out where these overlap points are, and make sure people don't panic." "Agreed," Hal said. "Jessica, contact the Justice League. They need to know what's happening." "Justice League?" Kakashi inquired. "Heroes from our world," Carol explained. "They handle situations like, well, not exactly like this. Nothing like this has ever happened before." Naruto's changed eyes met Carol's, unspoken understanding passing between them. Whatever had connected them had created something unprecedented. Something neither world was prepared for. "We should return to Konoha immediately," Kakashi decided. "Lady Tsunade needs to be informed, and we'll need to coordinate with your Justice League to prevent chaos." Carol nodded. "I'll accompany you. The Star Sapphires should be represented in these discussions, especially given the apparent connection between our power source and—" She gestured to Naruto's eyes. "I'll go too," Jessica volunteered. As a Green Lantern representative, Hal looked like he wanted to object but finally nodded. "I'll coordinate with the Corps and meet you there. The Guardians will want first-hand information about this dimensional anomaly." As the others made arrangements for immediate action, Naruto found himself standing apart, the way of what had happened settling over him. His hand unconsciously rose to his eyes, feeling the unfamiliar energy that now flowed through them. Carol approached, her expression softened from its earlier intensity. "You didn't know this would happen." It wasn't a question, but Naruto shook his head anyway. "I've been having dreams, visions, maybe. Something was trying to reach me, but I never imagined this." "The violet light chooses those with great capacity for love," Carol said quietly. "But it's never manifested like this before, never bridged dimensions. There's something unique about you, Naruto Uzumaki." He managed a tired smile. "That's what they tell me. When our hands connected, I saw fragments of your life." Her voice lowered further. "You've known great pain, great loneliness. Yet your capacity for love remained uncorrupted. That's rare, even among those the violet light chooses." Naruto shifted uncomfortably under her perceptive gaze. "I saw things too. Your world, it's full of powers and threats we can't even imagine. And yours contains energies and abilities unknown to ours," she countered. "Perhaps that's why this happened. Two worlds with complementary powers, connected through individuals attuned to the same fundamental force." Before Naruto could respond, Kakashi called them over. "We're ready to move. The fastest route back to Konoha will take us through territories that may have been affected by the merger. We should stay alert." As they prepared to depart, Naruto cast one last look at the clearing where everything had changed. The forest remained transformed, crystalline trees glimmering with inner light, the ground itself pulsing gently with violet energy. Whatever had happened here had altered reality itself, and something told him the changes were only beginning. Carol followed his gaze, understanding in her eyes. The violet light reveals truth, Naruto. Whatever it's showing you through those eyes of yours, whatever it's trying to tell you, it's something you were meant to see. And what if I don't like what I see? He asked. Her smile held both warning and promise. That's the thing about love, in all its forms. It doesn't always show you what you want to see, it shows you what you need to see. With that cryptic statement hanging between them, they joined the others, racing back toward Konoha through a forest now too. UCHED by energies from beyond their world. Above them, two skies had become one, stars and sunlight mingling in impossible harmony. And in Naruto's eyes, the first stages of the violet Sharingan continued to evolve. Responding to emotions and energies he was only beginning to understand. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Worlds in Collision. Dawn broke over Konoha in shades of violet and gold, sunlight filtering through a sky that no longer belonged solely to their world. Citizens gathered in streets and on rooftops, pointing upward at the impossible, twin moons hanging in daylight, unfamiliar constellations fading with morning's approach. And in the distance, the ghostly silhouette of a city that had never existed in their world before. From the Hokage Tower's observation deck, Naruto watched the growing crowds with unease. Beside him stood Tsunade, her face impassive but knuckles white as she gripped the railing. Carol Ferris and Jessica Cruz flanked them, the lanterns, presence drawing CU. Rias stares from Shinobi Station nearby. How bad is it? Naruto asked, his newly transformed eyes scanning the village. The violet energy flowing through them revealed layers of reality invisible to others, places where the two worlds meshed perfectly and others where they remained separate but adjacent, like oil and water refusing to mix. Bad enough, Tsunade replied grimly. Reports coming in from every border. The Land of Fire has acquired portions of what Ms. Ferris calls California and Nevada. The Land of Water now contains sections of something called the Atlantic Ocean, NCLUDING, several islands that weren't there yesterday. Coast City appears to have partially merged with your northeastern forest, Carol added, her voice maintaining the practiced calm of a corpora te executive despite the extraordinary circumstances. Metropolis is overlapping with parts of the Land of Lightning. Gotham City has merged with the outskirts of the Land of Earth. And that's just what we've confirmed so far. Jessica interjected, the newest Green Lantern fidgeting with her ring as she spoke. The Guardians are going ballistic. Nothing like this has ever happened in recorded history. Tsunade turned her amber gaze to Naruto. And all of this because you touched a light. It wasn't just that. Carol interceded before Naruto could respond. The violet light had already breached dimensional boundaries. If anything, Naruto's interaction may have stabilized what could have been a more catastrophic merger. Tsunade studied the star Sapphire with the shrewd assessment of a leader weighing a potential ally. In the hours since their arrival, the Hokage had demonstrated remarkable adaptability, moving from shocked disbelief to pragmatic planning in the space of a single briefing. Explain this emotional spectrum, again, she commanded. In terms my people can understand. Carol nodded, her violet uniform shifting like liquid light as she turned to face Tsunade directly. Imagine that the universe is powered by emotion itself. 7 core emotions: will, fear, rage, avarice, hope, compassion, and love, each represent a fundamental force that can be harnessed through specific conduits. She gestured to the crystal at her throat. This star sapphire crystal channels the violet light of love. Jessica's ring channels the green light of willpower. Each core aims a central power battery that collects and redistributes its specific emotional energy throughout the universe. And this has never intersected with chakra before? Kakashi asked from where he leaned against a nearby wall. His visible eye narrowed in thought. Never, Jessica confirmed. Until yesterday, we had no knowledge of your dimension or its energy systems. Shikamaru, who had been silently analyzing everything from a corner, finally spoke. Yet these energies are compatible enough to interact rather than annihilate each other. Troublesome as it is, that suggests some common origin or structure. Carol's eyes widened slightly. That's a remarkably insightful observation. Shikamaru's our leading strategist for a reason, Naruto said with a flash of his old grin. Before wincing as another pulse of energy surged behind his eyes. Carol noticed immediately. Your eyes are changing again. All attention shifted to Naruto. The violet energy swirling in his irises had intensified overnight, occasionally forming patterns reminiscent of the Sharingan's Tomo but more fluid, more alive. It doesn't hurt exactly, he explained, blinking rapidly. It's like learning to see all over again. I'm perceiving things that were always there but invisible before. Like what? Tsunade demanded. Naruto hesitated, struggling to articulate the impossible. Connections between people. Emotions have color and texture. When you look at Shizune, there's a golden thread linking you to her, trust, affection. When Kakashi-sensei looks at me, there's a blue-green light, pride mixed with concern. His gaze shifted to Carol, then quickly away. And some connections are more complex. If Carol noticed his discomfort, she gave no sign. The violet light reveals emotional truth, particularly forms of love, familial, platonic, romantic. If Naruto is somehow channeling that energy through his visual system, he's essentially developing a form of emotional perception. Quote, like the Byakugan can see chakra networks, Sakura suggested from where she stood examining medical reports. Only he's seeing emotional networks instead. That's actually a good analogy, Carol acknowledged. A commotion at the door interrupted their discussion. Shizune burst in, slightly breathless. The delegation from the Justice League has arrived, she announced. And there's something else. Reports of strange phenomena at the Uchiha compound. Tsunade straightened. What kind of phenomena? Chakra readings unlike anything our sensors have encountered, Shizune replied. And witnesses report seeing shadows moving where nothing casts them. A chill passed through Naruto. Without conscious thought, he found himself moving toward the door. I need to check this out. Wait, Carol called, stepping forward. If this is related to the dimensional merger, you shouldn't go alone. The violet energy in your eyes might attract or amplify whatever's happening. I'll go with him, Kakashi volunteered. So will I, Carol added, with a tone that brooked no argument. Tsunade considered briefly before nodding. Go, but observe only. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Jessica, please remain here to brief the Justice League representatives when they arrive. The young Green Lantern nodded, relief evident in her expression. For all her power, diplomatic meetings clearly weren't her comfort zone. Be careful, Naruto, Tsunade added, her eyes softening momentarily. Whatever's happening to you, we still don't understand it. Naruto managed another smile, this one more forced than before. When have I ever been careful, Granny? The Uchiha compound stood silent and largely abandoned, as it had since the massacre years earlier. Only Sasuke occasionally occupied the ancestral grounds, and he was currently away on a long-term mission in the Land of Iron. The place held memories too painful for most Konoha citizens, who gave it a wide berth even during normal times. Today, however, the compound had drawn a small crowd of curious onlookers, kept at a safe distance by Anbu guards. As Naruto, Kakashi, and Carol approached, the reason became evident. The entire district seemed to exist in a state of visual flux, buildings and streets occasionally blurring as if seen through water, reality itself unstable. The dimensional boundary is particularly thin here, Carol observed, her crystal glowing brighter as they neared. It's almost as if something is actively weakening it from the other side. Kakashi revealed his Sharingan, studying the phenomenon. There's an energy signature unlike anything I've encountered. Not quite chakra, not quite like your light energy either. I can see it, Naruto said suddenly, his transformed eyes focused on something invisible to others. Black threads, like negative light, pulling at the fabric of this place. He moved forward with purpose, navigating the compound as if following a trail. Carol and Kakashi exchanged glances before following, their respective powers ready. Naruto led them to the central square where the massacre had begun. Here, the dimensional fluctuations intensified, the Rai air seeming to ripple with distortion. Something died here, Carol whispered, her voice tight. Many someones. Violently. The Uchiha clan, Kakashi confirmed grimly. Murdered by one of their own. Death leaves impressions. Carol continued, her expression troubled. Emotional echoes that can linger for years. In my universe, there are entities that feed on such echoes, that can use them as anchors. Before either shinobi could respond, the air in the center of the square tore open, not the chaotic rift of their previous encounter but a precise, controlled puncture in reality. Through it stepped a figure that radiated wrongness, a humanoid form composed of absolute darkness outlined in white light. Where a face should have been, only a stylized skull leered, and on its chest gleam. A symbol reminiscent of the lanterns, insignias but inverted, corrupted. Black hand, Carol spat, violet energy immediately enveloping her as she rose into a defensive position. How did you find this place? The entity tilted its head, the movement unnaturally fluid. When it spoke, its voice resonated with multiple tones, as if many voices spoke in terrible unison. Star Sapphire. So far from home. The skull face twisted in a parody of amusement. We felt the barrier weaken. We felt the death's calling. So much beautiful pain in this place, so much exquisite loss. We, Kakashi questioned, hands already forming signs for a jutsu. The entity gestured, and from the rift behind it emerged more figures, these more substantial, more specific in their horror. Naruto recoiled as recognition dawned. These were Uchiha clan members, their bodies restored but wrong, skin ashen gray, eyes replaced with burning white lights, and each wearing a black ring on one finger. The Black Lantern Corps serves death itself. Carol explained rapidly, never taking her eyes off the enemy. They use corpses as vessels, powered by the black rings. These aren't just any corpses, Naruto replied, horror evident in his voice. These are the Uchiha, Sasuke's family. Black Hand's laughter echoed unnaturally across the compound. Such potential in these vessels. Such perfect hatred and love intertwined in their final moments. And the eyes, such magnificent eyes they possessed. As if on cue, the reanimated Uchiha corpses activated their Sharingan, but these were wrong too, the familiar D replaced by that same burning white light. This is bad, Kakashi muttered, falling into a fighting stance. If they retain their jutsu capabilities along with whatever these black rings grant them. He didn't finish the thought before the first Uchiha zombie attacked, hands flashing through signs with inhuman speed. A massive fireball erupted toward them, its flames black rather than red. Carol reacted instantly, creating a violet energy shield that absorbed the dark fire. Don't let them touch you. The rings feed on emotional response. They'll try to provoke you, use your feelings against you. Naruto felt a cold rage building within him. The Uchiha had suffered enough in life. To see them desecrated in death was unbearable. The violet energy in his eyes flared, responding to his emotions. Get out of our world. He growled, chakras swirling around him as he formed a Rasengan. But as the energy gathered, it too changed, violet light intertwining with the blue chakra to create Nothing new, a Rasengan that pulsed with emotional energy. Black Hand observed with evident fascination. Interesting. You are not a lantern, yet you channel the violet light. Your emotional capacity must be exceptional. The entity gestured, and the Uchiha zombies attacked en masse, their movements coordinated and relentless. Kakashi engaged three simultaneously, his own Sharingan and decades of combat experience keeping him one step ahead of their assault. Carol took to the air, violet constructs forming weapons and shields as she battled others. Naruto found himself facing a young Uchiha woman. Her black ring gleaming as she spoke in a voice devoid of true life. You're the Kyuubi boy, she said, her white eyes fixing on him. My cousin Shisui spoke of you once. Such loneliness in your heart. Such desperate need for connection. Don't listen, Carol called, even as she deflected another attack. They use personal details to provoke emotional responses. But Naruto couldn't help it. The violet energy in his eyes seemed to respond to the black ring, allowing him to see the corruption flowing through the reanimated corpse. Beneath it, he glimpsed fragments of who this woman had been, her hopes, her fears. Her final moments of terror as her own clan member cut her down. I'm sorry, he whispered, raising his violet-infused Rasengan. I'll free you from this. He struck forward, expecting the usual devastating impact of his signature technique. Instead, something unprecedented occurred. As the Rasengan connected, the violet energy surged forward, enveloping the black ring. For a brief moment, the white light in the Uchiha woman's eyes flickered, revealing the natural Sharingan beneath. "Help us," she gasped, the real person momentarily breaking through the Black Lantern control. Before Naruto could respond, Black Hand snarled, raising a clawed hand. The black ring on the woman's finger pulsed, reasserting control. The moment of humanity vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Impossible," the entity hissed. "The black light cannot be purified." Carol, witnessing the interaction from above, redoubled her attacks with new purpose. "Naruto, your violet Sharingan can disrupt the black rings. Control. Focus on the rings themselves." Understanding dawned. Naruto created 2 shadow clones, each forming the same violet-infused Rasengan. They head themselves at different Uchiha zombies, aiming specifically for the hands bearing the black rings. The effect was immediate and dramatic. As each violet Rasengan connected with a black ring, energy cascaded outward, violet light combating black corruption. The reanimated Uchiha convulsed, caught between opposing forces. Black Hand shrieked, a sound that seemed to tear at reality itself. "No, the harvest has only begun. These vessels are claimed for Necron." "Not anymore," Naruto countered, creating more shadow clones to engage the remaining zombies. "These people have suffered enough. You don't get to use them." As more black rings encountered the violet energy, the tide began to turn. The Uchiha zombies faltered, their movements becoming disjointed as the control over them weakened. Carol pressed the advantage, her violet constructs now targeting Black Hand directly. "Retreat," the entity commanded, darkness swirling around it like a cloak. "This nexus is stronger than anticipated. We require reinforcement." With unnatural speed, Black Hand slipped back through the rift, the remaining zombies lurching after it. Those whose rings had been damaged collapsed to the ground, the black energy dissipating from their bodies. "Don't let him escape," Carol shouted, diving toward the closing portal. But she was too late. The rift sealed itself with a sound like tearing flesh, leaving only the fallen Uchiha corpses behind, now truly dead, their borrowed animation gone. Silence fell over the compound, broken only by the heavy breathing of the 3 combatants. Kakashi approached the nearest body, kneeling to examine it with grim expertise. "They're just corpses now," he confirmed. "Whatever animated them is gone. For now," Carol corrected, landing beside Naruto. Violet aura dimmed but didn't disappear entirely. "But Black Hand will return." And he mentioned Necron. "Who's Necron?" Naruto asked, the violet energy in his eyes slowly subsiding. Carol's expression darkened. "The embodiment of death itself. If he's taken an interest in your world, in the Uchiha specifically, we're facing something far worse than dimensional merger." Naruto looked around at the fallen Uchiha, his heart heavy. "They need proper burial, proper respect." "Yes," Kakashi agreed, "and Sasuke should be informed immediately." These were his family members. "First, we need to secure this area," Carol insisted. "The black energy has weakened the dimensional boundary here. More incursions could happen at any moment." Naruto nodded, then froze as another wave of sensation washed through his eyes. The violet energy pulsed, showing him something new, a network of connections spreading outward from where they stood, linking to other locations throughout Konoha and beyond. "There are more places like this," he said quietly, "places where death left strong impressions. The hospital's intensive care unit, the memorial stone, the forest of death, they're all thinner somehow, more vulnerable." Carol and Kakashi exchanged worried glances. "We need to establish a perimeter at each location," Kakashi decided. "Anbu guards, sealing jutsu, and if possible, representatives from your Lantern Corps." "I'll contact the other Sapphires," Carol agreed. "But our numbers are limited. We'll need your world's defenders as well. And we need to understand what these rings are," Naruto added, gesturing to the black bands still on the Uchiha corpse's fingers. "How they work, how they're controlled." Carol hesitated, then carefully removed one ring from a fallen Uchiha. The band seemed to resist, clinging to the dead flesh before finally releasing. Even inactive, it radiated malevolence. "This should be studied in controlled conditions," she said, encasing the ring in a violet energy construct. "But carefully." These rings call to others of their kind. Where one appears, more will follow. Kakashi signaled to the Anbu guards, who approached cautiously. Secure these bodies. Full containment protocols. And send word to the Hokage. We have confirmation of hostile interdimensional entities. As the Anbu moved to carry out their orders, Naruto found himself staring at the spot where the rift had closed. The violet energy in his eyes revealed lingering traces of black corruption, like oil on water, slowly spreading through the dimensional fabric. This is just the beginning, isn't it? He asked quietly. Carol's expression softened slightly, her customary reserve giving way to genuine concern. I'm afraid so. The Black Lantern Corps doesn't retreat, they regroup. And if Necron is truly interested in your world, in its death energy and these Sharingan eyes. She didn't need to finish. The implication hung between them, heavy with foreboding. Then we'll be ready, Naruto said with characteristic determination. My world's faced extinction before. So has yours, from what I glimpsed through our connection. We'll face this together. Carol studied him for a long moment, seeming to see beyond his confident words to the uncertainty beneath. The violet light chose well, she finally said. Your capacity for love, for your friends, your village, even for enemies who can be redeemed, it's extraordinary. Naruto shifted uncomfortably under her perceptive gaze. It's not extraordinary, it's just who I am. Which is precisely what makes it remarkable, she replied. Most beings require a power ring to channel the emotional spectrum effectively. You're doing it through sheer force of character. Before Naruto could respond, Kakashi rejoined them. We should return to the Hokage Tower. If what you say about these Black Lanterns is true, we need to coordinate our defenses immediately. Carol nodded, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. Agreed. And we need to brief the Justice League representatives as well. They have experience with Necron and the Black Lanterns that will be invaluable. As they prepared to depart, to cast one last look at the fallen Uchiha. Something about their desecration struck him as particularly deliberate, not random opportunity but targeted exploitation. The Sharingan, he said suddenly. Black Hand specifically mentioned their eyes. Why would that matter to an entity from your universe? Carol frowned thoughtfully. The black rings reanimate corpses, but they work best with vessels that experienced strong emotions in life and death. From what little I know of the Uchiha, their eyes were connected to their emotional states, weren't they? Yes, Kakashi confirmed. The Sharing, and typically awakens during moments of extreme stress or emotional trauma. The more powerful forms require even greater emotional catalysts. Then that might be what attracted Black Hand, Carol reasoned. Eyes that literally transform through emotional energy would be particularly valuable to the Black Lantern Corps. If they could somehow harness that evolutionary mechanism. The implication sent a chill through Naruto. We need to warn every surviving Sharingan user. Sasuke, Kakashi-sensei, you're both potential targets. I already am, Kakashi reminded him with grim humor, tapping beneath his covered eye. But yes, Sasuke should be recalled immediately. And there's another concern. If these Black Lanterns are interested in powerful ocular abilities. The Hyuga clan, Naruto finished, immediately thinking of Hinata and her family. The Byakugan would be just as attractive. I'll arrange protection details for the Hyuga compound, Kakashi decided. Though I suspect Hiashi will insist his clan can protect themselves. They can't, Carol stated flatly. Not against this. The Black Lanterns aren't living enemies that can be defeated through conventional means. Their death itself, using corpses as puppets. Emotional defense is as important as physical defense. They departed the Uchiha compound with renewed urgency, leaving Anbu teams to secure the area and properly contain the fallen. Above them, the merged sky continued its impossible display, Konoha's familiar blue interspersed with stars that belong to another universe entirely. The Hokage Tower had transformed into an impromptu crisis center by the time they returned. Representatives from multiple shinobi departments crowded the main conference room, along with figures that clearly belonged to Carol's world, men and women in distinctive costumes that marked them as something other than conventional warriors. Tsunade stood at the center of this controlled chaos, her commanding presence establishing order despite the extraordinary circumstances. Beside her stood Shizune and Shikamaru, along with Jessica Cruz and a tall, powerfully built man in blue and red with a distinctive emblem on his chest. "Ah, Superman." Carol greeted the man with evident respect. "I see the League sent their best." The man, Superman, turned toward them, his expression serious but not unkind. "Carol, the Guardians informed us of the dimensional breach, but I don't think any of us anticipated a full merger." His gaze shifted to Naruto, eyes narrowing slightly as he observed the violet energy still swirling in the young shinobi's irises. "And you must be Naruto Uzumaki. I'm told you're central to whatever's happening." Before Naruto could respond, Tsunade cut in. "We have reports of black ring phenomena in 3 other locations now. Whatever you encountered at the Uchiha compound is spreading." Carol quickly briefed the assembled leaders on their confrontation with Black Hand and the reanimated Uchiha. As she explained the nature of the Black Lantern Corps, Superman's expression grew increasingly grim. "Necron," he said when she finished. "We've faced him before. If he's found a way to access your world, to use these Sharingan abilities she mentioned, we've already dispatched protection details to known Dujutsu users," Tsunade confirmed. "But we need to understand why this is happening now. Why the sudden interest in our world?" "It's not sudden," a new voice interjected. All eyes turned to a dark-haired woman who had remained silent until now. Dressed in a distinctive outfit of black and white with fishnets, a top hat held casually in one hand, she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention. "The dimensional walls have been thinning for months," she continued. Stepping forward, "I detected the magical fluctuations but couldn't pinpoint the source. Now I understand why. It wasn't coming from our universe at all." "This is Zatanna Zatara," Superman introduced her. "Member of the Justice League and one of our foremost magical experts." Naruto felt an immediate pull toward the woman, not physical attraction but something more fundamental, a sense of recognition. The violet energy in his eyes pulsed, revealing a complex aura around her composed of arcane energies entirely different from chakra yet somehow familiar. "You're a magic user," he said without thinking. "But not like our shinobi." Zatanna arched an eyebrow, studying him with newfound interest. "And you can see that? Interesting. Most people just see the fishnet stockings and stop thinking altogether." Quote, despite the gravity of the situation, several people chuckled, breaking some of the tension in the room. "Ms. Zatara has been analyzing the dimensional breach from a magical perspective," Tsunade explained. "Her insights have been illuminating." "Call me Zatanna, please," the magician corrected with an easy smile. "And illuminating is putting it mildly. Your chakra system is fascinating, a perfect fusion of physical and spiritual energy that accomplishes what our world requires complex spellcraft to achieve." She approached Naruto, professional curiosity evident in her expression. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward his eyes. Naruto hesitated, then nodded. Zatanna murmured something, words spoken backward that resonated with power, and made a complex gesture with her hands. Her eyes glowed briefly as she studied whatever her spell revealed. "Extraordinary," she breathed. "You're channeling emotional spectrum energy directly through your ocular nervous system. It's rewiring your perception entirely, creating something neither world has seen before." "But is it dangerous?" Tsunade demanded, practical as always. Zatanna considered before answering. "Not inherently, but it's certainly unprecedented. The emotional spectrum wasn't designed to be filtered through living tissue this way. It usually requires a conduit, a ring, a crystal, a staff." "So what makes Naruto different?" Kakashi asked. Carol and Zatanna exchanged glances, a silent communication between experts from different fields recognizing a common puzzle. "His unique chakra composition," Carol suggested, "as the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails." "That's part of it," Zatanna agreed. "But there's something more fundamental. Something about his emotional capacity itself." Superman had been listening intently, his expression thoughtful. "The merger of our worlds wasn't random, was it? Something, or someone, wanted specific elements of each universe to connect." "That's my working theory," Zatanna confirmed. "The breach points are too selective, the overlaps too precise. Locations with strong emotional resonance in both universes have merged first, places of great triumph, great tragedy, or great potential, like the Uchiha compound," Naruto realized. "A site of massacre merging with Crime Alley in Gotham," Superman finished grimly. Where Batman's parents were murdered. A chill passed through the room as the implications sank in. These weren't random convergences but deliberate alignments of emotional power. So what's the endgame? Shikamaru asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. What does Necron gain from merging our worlds? Power. Carol answered simply. Death exists in all universes, but its manifestations differ. In our world, Necron is its embodiment. In yours, the Pure Land and the impure world, Tsunade supplied. Our afterlife and the realm from which forbidden resurrection jutsu draw their power. Exactly, Zatanna nodded. By merging the dimensional boundaries, Necron potentially gains access to your resurrection systems, ways to manipulate death that don't exist in our universe. And the Sharingan, Kakashi prompted, unconsciously touching his covered eye. Eyes that evolve through emotional trauma, that can copy abilities and manipulate reality itself. Zatanna shook her head. I can't. Imagine a more perfect tool for an entity that feeds on emotional death energy. The conference room fell silent as the true scope of the threat became clear. This wasn't merely about adapting to merged worlds but preventing something far worse, the weaponization of death itself across multiple realities. We need a plan, Superman finally said, his voice cutting through the grim silence. A joint task force from both worlds. Agreed, Tsunade nodded. Teams composed of both shinobi and your heroes. Pairs matched for complementary abilities. I'll work with Naruto, Carol stated, her T1 making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. His connection to the violet light makes him uniquely suited to countering the black rings, as we saw at the Uchiha compound. I'd like to join that team, Zatanna added. Surprising several people, the interaction between his evolving abilities and my magic could yield insights we desperately need. Naruto found himself suddenly the center of attention, uncomfortable yet resolute. The violet energy in his eyes pulsed in response to his determination. I'll do whatever it takes, he said simply. This is my home, and I'll protect it, even from threats from another dimension. Superman studied him with newfound respect. The Green Lanterns have a saying. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. I think you'd have made an excellent Green Lantern. Naruto Uzumaki. He's something more interesting, Carol countered with the hint of a smile. A bridge between our worlds, between different power systems. Something Necron couldn't have anticipated. Which gives us our first real advantage, Tsunade concluded. Now we need to press it before Necron and his Black Lanterns gain a stronger foothold. The meeting shifted into strategic planning, with teams being assembled and patrol schedules established. As the discussion continued, Naruto found himself gradually withdrawing, the constant bombardment of information and sensations through his changed eyes becoming overwhelming. He slipped out onto a balcony, seeking a moment's respite from the chaos. The merged sky above Konoha still disoriented him, familiar yet wrong. Like a painting where the artist had incorporated elements that didn't belong. Overwhelming, isn't it? He turned to find Zatanna leaning against the doorframe, her expression sympathetic. A bit, he admitted. Yesterday I was just Naruto. Today I'm apparently some kind of interdimensional anomaly with eyes that channel cosmic love energy. Zatanna chuckled, moving to join him at the railing. If it helps, I've seen weirder. Last month I helped Superman fight a fifth-dimensional imp who turned the Justice League headquarters into sentient cheese. Despite everything, Naruto laughed. Seriously, magic is rarely dignified, she confirmed with a wry smile. Neither is saving the world, despite what the legends claim afterward. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the strange new Konoha below. Your eyes, Zatanna finally said. They're still adjusting. The input must be excruciating. Naruto blinked in surprise. How did you know? I recognize sensory overload when I see it, she replied. My magical sensitivity developed similarly, suddenly perceiving layers of reality others couldn't see. It can be maddening at first. It's not pain exactly, Naruto tried to explain. More like trying to listen to 100 conversations at once while watching 1,000 movies simultaneously. Zatanna nodded in understanding. I might be able to help with that. A focusing spell, perhaps. Something to help you filter the input until you develop natural control. You can do that, maybe. She tilted her head, studying him. Your energy system is different from what I'm used to, but the principles should translate. Magic is ultimately about will and intent, not unlike your chakra. Before Naruto could respond, Carol joined them on the balcony. Her violet aura dimmed but still visible. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly sorry. "We have reports of another Black Lantern incursion. This time near your training grounds." Naruto straightened immediately. Training ground 3. The Memorial Stone. Carol nodded grimly. A place of remembrance for fallen warriors. CTLY, the kind of emotional nexus Black Hand would target. "Let me grab my gear," Naruto said, already moving toward the door. "Wait," Zatanna called, reaching out to touch his arm. As contact was made, a spark of energy passed between them, violet light from his eyes meeting arcane blue from her fingertips. Both gasped simultaneously, startled by the unexpected resonance. "What was that?" Carol asked sharply, moving closer. "I'm not sure," Zatanna admitted, looking at her hand with surprise. "Some kind of sympathetic reaction between his evolving abilities and my magical aura." Naruto blinked rapidly, the violet energy in his eyes briefly shifting to include flecks of blue. "For a second there, I could see everything. Every connection, every possibility, perfectly clear." "Interesting," Carol murmured, her gaze moving between them. "The violet light seeks connections, bridges between individuals. Perhaps it's trying to establish a network, links between compatible energy users from both worlds." "We can investigate that later," Naruto insisted, refocusing on the immediate threat. "Right now, we have Black Lanterns to deal with." Zatanna nodded, recovering her composure. "I'm coming with you. If nothing else, my magic might help contain whatever we find." "As am I," Carol added, her crystal glowing brighter. "My constructs were effective against the Black Lanterns before. Together, we might be able to do more than merely repel them this time." As the three of them prepared to depart, Naruto felt a strange certainty settling over him. 3 days ago, his world had made sense, difficult and dangerous at times, but comprehensible. Now reality itself had been rewritten, merging with a universe of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. Yet somehow, standing beside these two women from different worlds, each powerful in her own unique way, the impossible situation felt right. As if pieces of a cosmic puzzle were finally falling into place, with him at the center. The violet energy in his eyes pulsed in agreement, revealing connections forming between the three of them, threads of potential, of compatibility, of shared purpose. Different from the connections he perceived between old friends, these new bonds glimmered with possibilities he couldn't yet fully comprehend. Whatever was happening to him, whatever his violet Sharingan was becoming, Naruto knew one thing with absolute certainty: he wasn't facing it alone. And for someone who had grown up in isolation, that made all the difference. Training Ground 3 had transformed. The familiar clearing with its 3 posts and memorial stone now existed in 2 places simultaneously, the Konoha training area overlapping with what appeared to be a coastal cemetery from Carol's world. Stones from both realities occupied the same space without displacing each other, creating a surreal doubled landscape where monuments to the dead from 2 different universes stood in impossible proximity. "Coast City Memorial Cemetery," Carol explained as they approached. "Where the victims of Mongols' attack were buried, an entire city's worth of dead. Just like our memorial stone commemorates generations of fallen shinobi," Naruto observed grimly. 2 places of mass mourning merged together. "A necromancer's dream," Zatanna added, her hands already tracing arcane patterns in the air. So much death energy concentrated in one location. They advanced cautiously. Unlike the Uchiha compound where the Black Lanterns had already manifested, this merged cemetery remained eerily still. Too still. No birds sang. No insects buzzed, even the wind seemed reluctant to disturb the unnatural silence. "I don't like this," Naruto murmured, the violet energy in his eyes pulsing as he scanned their surroundings. "There's something waiting." Carol's crystal flared in agreement, responding to something the others couldn't yet perceive. Black energy signatures, just beyond conventional perception. They're here but not fully manifested. They're waiting for something, Zatanna surmised, completing a detection spell. Magic circles briefly appeared around her hands, glowing blue-white before fading. Or someone. Naruto's gaze was drawn to the memorial stone, the centerpiece of Training Ground 3, inscribed with the names of Konoha's heroes who had died in service to the village. Among those names, he knew, were his parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. The realization hit him with sudden clarity. They're waiting for me, for my emotional response. Carol and Anna both turned to him with matching expressions of concern. Your parents' names are on that monument, Carol stated, not a question but a confirmation. Naruto nodded. The Black Lanterns feed on emotional connections to the dead. What stronger connection than that? It's a trap, Zatanna concluded, raising her magical defenses. They're hoping to use your emotional response to power their manifestation. Then we deny them that power, Carol decided, violet energy forming a protective aura around all three of them. Emotional discipline is crucial when facing Black Lanterns. Focus on the present, on the living, not on those you've lost. Naruto appreciated her pragmatism, but the advice came too late. Simply being in this place, seeing the memorial stone merged with Carol's world's cemetery, had already awakened the grief he usually kept carefully controlled. Thoughts of his parents, of their sacrifice, of the childhood without them, rose unbidden. The violet energy in his eyes responded, not dimming but changing, revealing new layers of perception. Suddenly, he could see thin black tendrils rising from both the memorial stone and the alien headstones, reaching toward him like hungry serpents. They're activating, he warned, stepping back. Whatever you're going to do it now. Zatanna immediately began spellcasting, her words flowing backward as she created a circle of protective magic around them. Chisitorp su morph htds e carb me. Lays eht sigren fo k calb thgil. Carol rose into the air, violet constructs forming a secondary barrier beyond Zatanna's magic. Be ready. Once they fully manifest, they'll target our emotional weaknesses specifically. The black tendrils converged at the center of the merged cemeteries, coalescing into a swirling vortex of negative energy. From within this darkness emerged a figure, not Black Hand this time, but something far worse. Tall and skeletal, clad in robes that seemed woven from darkness itself, the entity Rad. Iated such profound wrongness that reality itself seemed to recoil from its presence. In one bony hand, it held a staff topped with a symbol similar to the Black Lantern rings. Necron, Carol breathed, genuine fear evident in her voice. The Lord of the Black Lanterns surveyed them with empty eye sockets that somehow still conveyed cruel amusement. When it spoke, its voice resonated not through air but through the mind itself, bypassing physical sound to imprint directly on consciousness. Star Sapphire of Earth, Zatanna Zatara, and something new, something unexpected. Its hollow gaze fixed on Naruto, specifically on his eyes. The violet light has found an unusual champion. How interesting. Naruto stood his ground despite the instinctive terror Necron's presence evoked. Whatever you're planning for my world, it ends now. Necron's lipless mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Your world, you still think so small, little vessel. This isn't about your insignificant village or even your planet. This is about the fundamental forces of creation itself. The entity gestured, and from the ground around them erupted more Black Lanterns, some wearing the familiar uniforms of Coast City's fallen citizens. Others clad in the distinctive armor and clothing of Konoha shinobi. Each bore a black ring, each moved with the unnatural precision of puppets controlled by a master hand. Your universes were never meant to be separate, Necron continued, seeming in no hurry to attack. Life divides. Death unites. I am merely correcting an ancient mistake. By desecrating the dead, Naruto challenged, chakra gathering around him as he prepared to fight. By turning them into your puppets. They are beyond pain, beyond care, Necron replied dismissively. Vessels only, serving a greater purpose. As you will serve, Naruto Uzumaki, once you understand your true nature. Something in the entity's tone gave Naruto pause. What do you mean? My true nature. Necker. On's hollow laughter echoed across the merged cemeteries. You think your connection to the violet light is coincidence. You think these eyes you're developing are merely chance. Ask your companions about the entity. About the origins of the emotional spectrum itself. Ask them why a being from one universe can so easily channel the fundamental forces of another. Before anyone could respond, Necron raised its staff, and the Black Lanterns attacked en masse. Carol's violet constructs intercepted the first wave, while Zatanna's magic created a secondary defense, binding several undead warriors in glowing sigils that restricted their movement. Naruto formed his shadow clones, each creating a Rasengan infused with violet energy. They launched themselves at the Black Lanterns, targeting the rings as they had at the Uchiha compound. But these undead were prepared, coordinating their movements with unnerving precision to avoid direct hits. "He's controlling them directly," Carol called from above, where she battled several flying Black Lanterns. "This isn't like before, they're extensions of Necron's will." Zatanna completed another spell, sending arcs of white lightning through 3 approaching zombies. The magic disrupted their coordination temporarily but didn't stop them completely. "We need to target Necron himself," she called to Naruto. "The puppets are just a distraction." Naruto nodded, gathering his chakra for a direct assault on the death entity. But before he could move, one particular Black Lantern broke through their defenses, a tall man with spiky blonde hair and white haori decorated with flame patterns. Beside him, a woman with long red hair, her face bearing a striking resemblance to Naruto's own. Naruto froze, recognition and horror washing over him in equal measure. Dad, Mom, Minato and Kushina Uzumaki stood before their son, their once warm features now ashen gray, their loving eyes replaced with the burning white light of the Black Lanterns. On their fingers gleamed the black rings, pulsing in time with Necron's staff. "Hello, son," Minato's voice emerged, hollow and wrong yet still recognizably his. "We've come to complete our family reunion." "This isn't real," Carol shouted, diving toward Naruto. "They're constructs designed to provoke emotional response. Don't engage." But the warning came too late. Seeing his parents, the pair NTS he had met only briefly during the war, the parents whose sacrifice had shaped his entire life, corrupted by Necron's power, broke something in Naruto. Rage and grief surged through him, and with it, the violet energy in his eyes flared to unprecedented intensity. "How dare you?" he whispered, then louder, "How dare you use them?" The violet Sharingan evolved in that moment of extreme emotion, the swirling energy crystallizing into a distinct pattern, 3 tomo arranged in a triangle around his pupils, but unlike the traditional Sharingan, these tomo pulsed with violet light, leaving trails as they rotated. Power exploded outward from Naruto in a violet shockwave, knocking back the nearest Black Lanterns and even causing Necron to take a single step backward. The emotional energy scatting from him was so intense that Carol's crystal nearly overloaded, forcing her to establish distance. "Naruto," Zatanna called, fighting to maintain her protective spells against the onslaught of his unleashed power. "You need to control it. You're feeding exactly what Necron wants." But control seemed beyond him now. The fully activated violet Sharingan responded to his emotional state, amplifying it and projecting it outward. Black Lanterns caught in the wave convulsed as violet energy invaded their rings, disrupting Necron's control. Minato and Kushina, however, remained standing, air Black Lantern forms reinforced by Necron's direct attention. They moved toward their son in perfect unison, black energy gathering around their hands. "Your capacity for love is impressive," Necron observed, genuine interest in its hollow voice. "But love and grief are 2 sides of the same coin. The deeper your capacity for one, the more vulnerable you are to the other." The death entity gestured, and Minato and Kushina attacked, not with ninja techniques but with concentrated blasts of black energy aimed directly at their son's heart. Carol dove between them, creating a violet shield that absorbed the worst of the attack but shattered under its force. The backlash sent her tumbling through the air, her uniform smoking from the corrosive touch of death energy. Zatanna unleashed her most powerful binding spell, temporarily immobilizing the Black Lantern versions of Naruto's parents. "Naruto, focus on Necron. Your parents are gone. These are just shells." Her words penetrated his emotional storm, bringing a measure of clarity. The violet Sharingan's rotation slowed, becoming more controlled, more focused. With tremendous effort, Naruto tore his gaze away from his parents' corrupted forms and fixed it on Necron. "You're right about one thing," he told the death entity, chakra and violet energy swirling around him in a double helix. "Love and grief are connected. But you forgot something important." He formed a Rasengan that pulsed with more than just violet energy. It contained every color of the emotional spectrum, a swirling miniature galaxy of power. Love transforms grief into strength. With that declaration, Naruto launched himself directly at Necron, moving with such speed that the Black Lanterns couldn't intercept him. The Spectrum Rasengan struck the D-eth entity's chest with devastating impact, driving the Lord of the Black Lanterns backward through several headstones. For a moment, Necron actually appeared damaged, black energy leaking from a crater in its skeletal form. But then it laughed, a sound of genuine amusement that chilled the air around them. "Well done, little vessel. You exceeded my expectations." The entity reformed, the damage closing like smoke returning to shape. "This encounter has been informative." Necron raised its staff, and the Black Lanterns, including the corrupted forms of Minato and Kushina, began sinking back into the ground. "We will meet again, Naruto Uzumaki, when you have learned what you truly are." With those cryptic words, Necron itself dissolved into darkness, the black energy receding like a tide returning to the sea. Within moments, the merged cemeteries stood empty once more, no evidence of the Black Lanterns remaining except disturbed earth and broken headstones. Naruto fell to his knees, the enormous expenditure of energy finally catching up to him. The violet Sharingan faded, returning to the more nebulous energy swirl of before, though the Tomo pattern had left its imprint. His yes now contained a permanent triangular structure within which the violet energy flowed. Carol landed beside him, her own powers dimmed from exertion. "Are you all right?" "No," he answered honestly, staring at the spot where his parents' corrupted forms had stood. "But I will be." Zatanna joined them, dispelling the last of her protective magic. "What Necron said about your true nature, that wasn't just psychological warfare. He knows something. Something about why I can channel the violet light this way." Naruto nodded, slowly rising to his feet. "About why our worlds are merging in the first place. And he called you vessel," Carol added thoughtfully. "Not just for the 9 tails, but something else." They stood in silence for a moment, each processing the implications of Necron's words. Finally, Naruto spoke again, his voice steadier. "We need to understand what's happening to me, what these eyes really are, why they're connecting to your emotional spectrum. And we need to do it before Necron makes his next move." Carol nodded in agreement. "The Zamorans might have answers. They've studied the violet light longer than anyone. And I know some magical archives might help explain the dimensional aspects," Zatanna offered. "Though accessing them will require a trip to my world, or what's left of it after the merger." "Then that's our next step," Naruto decided, his natural leadership asserting itself despite his exhaustion. "We gather information, we prepare, and when Necron returns, we'll be ready," Carol finished, violet light flaring around her with renewed determination. As they left the desecrated training ground, Naruto cast one final glance at the memorial stone. Whatever Necron might claim, whatever his true nature might be, one thing remained certain: he would protect his precious people, living and dead, from those who would use them as pawns in a cosmic game. The violet Sharingan pulsed in agreement, its power now permanently linked to his indomitable will. Chapter 2 End Chapter 3, The Black Resurrection. Midnight cloaked Konohagakure in shadows deepened by the unfamiliar stars of 2 merged skies. 3 days had passed since the confrontation at the memorial stone, 3 days of uneasy preparation as both worlds struggled to adapt to their new shared reality. In the subterranean research facility beneath Konoha Hospital, Naruto sat alone in a specially designed chamber, his eyes closed in meditation. The walls around him bore complex seals, some traditional shinobi work, other strange symbols contributed by Zatanna and her magical knowledge. Sensors attached to his temples and chest recorded every fluctuation in his chakra and the increasingly powerful violet energy flowing through his system. Neural activity increasing again, Sakura's voice noted over the intercom. Through the observation window, she and a team of specialists monitored his condition. The violet energy is integrating further with his chakra network, concentrating around the ocular pathways. "Fascinating," Zatanna murmured beside her, arcane energy dancing at her fingertips as she conducted her own analysis. "It's not replacing his chakra system, it's augmenting it, creating new channels specifically designed to process emotional energy." Carol Ferris stood slightly apart, her arms crossed as she studied the readings with a frown. The pattern resembles what happens when a star sapphire crystal bonds with a new bearer, but on a cellular level. His entire body is becoming attuned to the violet light. Within the chamber, Naruto heard their observations distantly, his consciousness turned inward. The violet Sharingan had continued evolving since its activation against Necron, the three Tomo now permanent fixtures within his irises. Violet energy constantly flowing between them in intricate patterns. With each passing day, his perception expanded, revealing layers of reality previously invisible. And with that expanded perception came understanding. The violet light wasn't meant to be channeled this way. The thought wasn't entirely his own. Since the confrontation with Necron, fragments of knowledge had been surfacing in his mind. Information about the emotional spectrum, about the nature of the lantern powers, about cosmic forces beyond his world's understanding. Yet you adapt to it regardless. This voice, warm and familiar, belonged to Kurama. The nine-tailed fox had been unusually quiet since the dimensional merger, observing the changes in his Jinchuriki with cautious interest. Something about this feels right, Kurama. Naruto replied within his mindscape. Not just the power, but the connection. Like I was always meant to bridge these worlds. The massive fox shifted within his seal, nine tails swaying thoughtfully. Perhaps you were. Your capacity for emotional connection has always been your greatest strength, more than your chakra, more than your lineage. If these, emotional spectrum, powers respond to such qualities, it's no surprise they found you. Before Naruto could respond, a new sensation washed over him, a distant pulse of darkness that sent chills through his heightened senses. His eyes snapped open, the violet Sharingan blazing. Something's happening, he said aloud, rising from his meditative position. Northwest border of the village, a black energy signature. Powerful. The observation room erupted into activity. Carol's crystal immediately flared in response, her own powers detecting the disturbance seconds after Naruto. He's right, she confirmed, already moving toward the exit. Black Lantern activity, and not just a scout this time. This is a full manifestation. I'll alert the Hokage, Sakura said, reaching for the emergency communication system. Zatanna quickly dispelled her monitoring spells, gathering her magical energy. If it's anything like what we faced at the Memorial Stone, we'll need reinforcements. Naruto exited the chamber, his weariness forgotten as adrenaline surged through his system. There's no time. Whatever's coming through, it's happening now. The northwestern border of Konoha had become one of the more dramatically affected areas of the dimensional merger. Here, the dense fire country forests abruptly transitioned into an alien landscape of crystalline formations and geometric rock structures, a region Carol had identified as belonging to a planet called Oa in her universe. The border between worlds wavered visibly, reality itself seeming uncertain where one dimension ended and the other began. Naruto, Carol, and Zatanna arrived to find a perimeter already established, Konoha Anbu on one side, and two green lanterns on the other. Among them stood Hal Jordan, whom Naruto had briefly met during the crisis meeting. And Jessica Cruz, looking tense but determined as she maintained an emerald barrier around a pulsing tear in reality. The boundaries weakening, Hal reported as they approached. His voice clipped and professional. Something's forcing its way through from the other side, something big. Not just forcing, Jessica added, strain evident in her voice as she reinforced her construct. It's corrupting the dimensional fabric itself. The black energy is eating away at the barrier like acid. Naruto activated his violet Sharingan fully, perception expanding to see what the others could not. The tear wasn't merely a hole between dimensions but a deliberate unraveling of reality's fundamental structure. Black tendrils worm through the spaces between atoms, between thoughts, between moments of time itself. Necron's not just coming through, he realized aloud. He's trying to merge the dimensional boundaries between life and death themselves. Carol's expression hardened. We need to contain this before. Her words cut off as the tear abruptly expanded, darkness pouring through like ink in water. The green lantern's construct strained against the pressure, emerald light fighting to hold back the encroaching void. Anbu members fell into defensive formations, though their unease was palpable, they were trained to fight flesh and blood enemies, not cosmic forces of death itself. From within the darkness emerged a procession of figures, first shadowy and indistinct, then solidifying into recognizable forms as they fully entered this dimension. Black rings gleamed on gray fingers. White eyes burned in ashen faces, and each wore the tattered remains of clothing that identified them as individuals who had once lived. "Zabuza Momochi," Naruto whispered. Recognizing the first figure, the demon of the hidden mist, his massive sword strapped to his back, his once fearsome presence now perverted by Necron's power. And Haku, the young ice user, stepped from the shadows behind Zabuza. His gentle features now a mask of death, the black ring seeming especially wrong on his delicate hand. "More are coming through," Hal warned, reinforcing his barrier as additional black lanterns emerged, some wearing the distinctive armor of hidden mist shinobi, others clad in strange uniforms that Naruto didn't recognize. "Fallen green lanterns," Carol explained grimly, following his gaze. "Necron isn't just drawing from your world's dead but from ours as well." Zatanna began casting a containment spell, arcane symbols forming a circle around the breach. "We need to seal this portal before more come through." The black lanterns paused just beyond the barriers, as if assessing the resistance before them. Then Zabuza stepped forward, his bandaged face unwrapping to reveal a grotesque parody of his living visage. When he spoke, his voice carried the hollow resonance characteristic of all black lanterns. "Naruto Uzumaki," he intoned, white eyes fixing on the young shinobi. "The boy who showed Haku and me a better path in our final moments. How you've grown." "You're not Zabuza," Naruto replied, violet energy gathering around him. "You're just Necron's puppet wearing his face." The black lantern tilted its head. "Am I? The ring contains the memories, the personality, the essence of who we were. In death, clarity comes. I remember our battle on the bridge. Remember how you changed Haku's heart, and mine." "Don't listen," Jessica called, her green light intensifying as she struggled to maintain the barrier. Black lanterns manipulate emotions. They find personal connections and exploit them. Haku moved to stand beside Zabuza, his beautiful features now a death mask. "You showed me that tools can become people, Naruto. That sacrifice for love is the highest purpose." He raised his ring hand. "Now we bring that lesson to all worlds. Death is the ultimate release from being used." The black energy around his ring coalesced, forming ice crystals that were wrong. Not the clear purity of Haku's living technique but corruption given form, death shaped into deadly weapons. With frightening speed, these black ice Senbon launched toward the defenders. Carol immediately created a violet shield, intercepting the projectiles before they could reach the others. The moment the black ice touched her violet constructs, both energies reacted violently, hissing and steaming at the point of contact. "They're stronger than before," she warned. "Necron's learning, adapting his power to counter ours." "Then we adapt faster," Naruto replied, forming shadow clones that spread out in tactical formation. The violet Sharingan spun rapidly, analyzing the black lantern's energy patterns, seeking weaknesses in their construction. "Za." Tana completed her spell with a final invocation. "Les eht latrop neuteb efil dnahtaed." Blue-white energy surged from her hands, wrapping around the dimensional tear-like stitches sealing a wound. The black lanterns already present roared in unison, a sound that penetrated bone and soul, as their connection to Necron's realm was severed. "We've cut them off from reinforcements," Zatanna announced, sweat beading on her brow from the effort. "But these ones are still here and fully powered." Hal Jordan created massive emerald hands that grasped two black lanterns, restraining them momentarily. "We need to focus on the rings. Destroy or disable the rings, and the corpses return to their natural state." "Naruto," Jessica called, creating a platform that elevated her above the battlefield. "Your violet Sharingan affected the rings before. Can you do it again?" Naruto nodded, his clones already moving into position. Each formed a Rasengan infused with violet energy, the technique he discovered could temporarily disrupt the black rings' control. Zabuza intercepted the first clone, his massive sword cleaving through it effortlessly. "Your tricks won't work twice, boy. Death learns. Death adapts." The black lantern moved with impossible speed, far exceeding the abilities he'd possessed in life. His sword, now wreathed in black energy, left trails of darkness as it cut through. GH3 more clones in rapid succession. Meanwhile, Haku engaged Carol directly, black ice formations battling against violet constructs in a deadly dance of opposing energies. The young ice user's techniques had evolved under Necron's influence, combining the precision of his living abilities with the corrupting power of the black light. "You channel love," Haku observed as his ice dragons clashed against Carol's violet warriors. "Such beautiful irony. Love is what destroyed me in life, willingness to die for Zabuza. Now death has made that sacrifice meaningful." "You're wrong," Carol countered, her constructs reshaping to counter his attack. "Your sacrifice already had meaning. Naruto carries the lesson you taught him to this day. This desecration isn't honoring your memory, it's perverting it." For an instant, something flickered in Haku's white eyes, a moment of doubt, of recognition. The black ring on his finger dimmed slightly, its control wavering. Naruto, engaged with two other black lanterns, caught the fluctuation through his violet Sharingan. Carol's right, Haku's still in there somewhere. The ring doesn't have complete control. "Impossible," Hal grunted as he led a former Green Lantern now serving death. "Black lanterns are just animated corpses, there's nothing left of the original consciousness." "Maybe that's true in your world," Naruto called back, forming another Rasengan. "But our dead are different. Our souls transition to the Pure Land, they don't simply cease to exist. What if Necron's rings aren't just animating empty vessels but actually binding fragments of soul that haven't fully departed?" The theory formed in his mind even as he voiced it, connections falling into place through his enhanced perception. The black lanterns from Carol's world moved differently than those from his, the former more mechanical, more puppet-like, while the latter retained subtle mannerisms and speech patterns of their living selves. "If that's true," Zatanna said, "binding another black lantern in magical restraints, then your violet Sharingan might do more than just disrupt the rings, it might actually help free the souls being manipulated." Naruto locked eyes with Haku across the battlefield, the violet Sharingan connecting with the corrupted ice user on a level beyond physical. Through this enhanced perception, he saw layers of black energy wrapped around a core of pure light, Haku's essential self, trapped and exploited but not destroyed. "Haku," he called, his voice carrying emotional energy that resonated through the connection. "Remember who you really are. Remember the bridge. Remember your sacrifice." The black lantern faltered, black ice constructs cracking as conflict played across his features. The ring on his finger fluctuated between brilliant white and smoky gray, its control slipping. "I remember," Haku whispered, voice briefly losing the hollow quality of the black lanterns. "Naruto, you've grown strong." Carol, recognizing what was happening, immediately redirected her violet energy. Rather than attacking Haku directly, she created a construct that surrounded the struggling black lantern, not restraining but supporting, amplifying the emotional connection Naruto had established. "Now, Naruto," she called, "while the connection is strongest." Naruto didn't hesitate. With blinding speed, he crossed the distance between them, violet Rasengan forming in his palm. As he approached Haku, the technique transformed, violet energy separating from the chakra core to target the black ring specifically. "Rest in peace, Haku," Naruto said softly as the energy made contact. The black ring shattered with a sound like breaking glass, fragments dissolving into smoke. Haku's body convulsed once, the white light fading from his eyes, revealing brown irises that held genuine recognition. "Thank you," he whispered, a smile of genuine peace crossing his features before the animation left his body entirely. Unlike the Uchiha corpses, which had simply collapsed when their rings were destroyed, Haku's body dissolved into particles of light that drifted upward, returning to the Pure Land from which it had been stolen. "That's not supposed to happen," Jessica breathed, momentarily distracted by the beautiful and unexpected sight. Zabuza had frozen in place, the black lantern's control momentarily disrupted by witnessing Haku's release. "The boy, free." Naruto immediately capitalized on the opening, directing his remaining clones to target Zabuza while the black lantern's defenses were compromised. 3 violet Rasengans struck simultaneously, one at the ring, one at the chest where the emotional center would be, and one at the forehead where consciousness resided. The combined impact shattered Zabuza's black ring and Like Haku before him, his consciousness briefly reasserted itself. The fearsome swordsman met Naruto's gaze with eyes that were his own again, clarity and recognition evident. "Well done, kid," he rumbled. His voice his own for the first time since his resurrection. Still protecting what matters. His form began dissolving into light, the particles swirling upward to join Haku's. "Keep getting stronger, you'll need it. He's coming." With the eyes. With that cryptic warning, Zabuza's essence departed, returning to the Pure Land and leaving only his massy Vei sword behind, cleansed of the black energy that had corrupted it. The remaining Black Lanterns, witnessing the liberation of their comrades, attacked with renewed fury. These were the fallen Green Lanterns from Carol's universe, and they showed no signs of retained consciousness or hesitation. "Why are they different?" Naruto called to Carol as they regrouped. "Why can't we reach them the same way?" "Different afterlife systems," Zatanna answered instead, maintaining her binding spells. "Your world has the Pure Land where souls retain individuality. In our universe, what happens after death is less defined." "Whatever the reason," Hal interjected, "we need to finish this." More Black Lanterns have been reported at other merger points. This was just the first wave. Working together, the combined forces of shinobi, lanterns, and magic systematically disabled the remaining Black Lanterns. Naruto's violet Sharingan proved instrumental, allowing him to perceive weaknesses in the R.I.N.G's construction that others couldn't see. When the last corpse fell, returning to inanimate matter without its animating ring, an uneasy quiet settled over the battlefield. The dimensional tear had been sealed, but the lingering corruption remained visible to Naruto's enhanced perception, black energy slowly seeping into the surrounding area like poison in soil. "This isn't over," Carol stated, her crystal dimming as she powered down. "Necron was testing us, probing our defenses, and learning our capabilities," Zatanna added, dispelling her remaining magical constructs. Specifically, learning about Naruto's violet Sharingan and its effect on the Black Rings. Jessica Cruz approached, her young face serious beneath her Green Lantern mask. Unlike Hal's confident bearing, Jessica carried herself with the caution of someone intimately familiar with fear, someone who had overcome it through sheer will rather than natural courage. "That was amazing," she said to Naruto, genuine admiration in her voice. "I've never seen anyone affect the Black Lanterns that way, certainly not without a power ring." Naruto smiled tiredly, the exertion of channeling so much violet energy catching up with him. "It wasn't just me." Carol's violet light amplified the connection, and Zatanna's magic helped contain them. "Still," Hal said, joining them, "what you did with Haku and Zabuza was unprecedented. You didn't just disable the rings, you actually freed their consciousness from Necron's control." "The question is," Carol added thoughtfully, "why is Necron targeting specific dead shinobi?" Zabuza mentioned him coming with the eyes. "That sounds like a particular individual, not random resurrection." A chill passed through Naruto as connections formed in his mind. The eyes, the Sharingan. He must mean. He was interrupted by the arrival of an Anbu messenger, appearing in a swirl of leaves beside them. Even through the porcelain mask, the shinobi's urgency was apparent. "Emergency transmission from Sunagaker," the Anbu reported. "They're under attack by an unknown force." Preliminary reports describe black-ringed reanimated shinobi led by Madara Uchiha. The name fell like a stone into still water. Ripples of dread spreading through all present. Even the lanterns, unfamiliar with Naruto's world, recognized the grave significance from the shinobi's reactions. "How is that possible?" Naruto demanded. "Madara's body was completely destroyed at the end of the war. Necron doesn't need an intact body," Carol explained grimly. "The Black Rings can reconstruct a Hicycle form from even the smallest remains, a fragment of bone, a lock of hair, sometimes just the lingering emotional imprint of a particularly powerful death. And Madara's death was about as powerful as they come," Zatanna noted. "The emotional resonance alone would act like a beacon to Necron." Naruto was already moving, his exhaustion forgotten. "We need to get to Suna immediately. Gaara and his people won't know how to fight these Black Lanterns." "I'll contact Tsunade and organize a response team," the Anbu said, disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. "I'm coming with you," Jessica volunteered immediately. "My ring allows faster than light travel," I can get us there in minutes. Hal nodded in agreement. I'll coordinate with the other lanterns and the Justice League. If Adara Uchiha is even half as powerful as your histories suggest, and he's now wielding a black ring. The implications hung in the air, too dire to require voicing. I'll accompany you as well, Carol stated, moving to stand beside Naruto. The violet light seems particularly effective against the black rings, especially when combined with your Sharingan. And I need to stay here, Zatanna decided reluctantly. These dimensional breaches require constant magical maintenance to prevent further deterioration. But take this. She removed a small amulet from around her neck, pressing it into Naruto's palm. It's connected to my magical signature. If things get dire, break it, and I'll know to send reinforcements. Naruto nodded, pocketing the amulet. Let's move. Every minute we delay puts more of Gaara's people at risk. As Jessica created a green energy platform to transport them, Carol placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder, her touch conveying both support and concern. Your eyes, she said quietly. They're evolving again. Naruto blinked, suddenly aware of changes in his perception. The violet Sharingan had indeed shifted, the three tomo now rotating continuously, leaving rails of light that formed complex patterns in his field of vision. With each revolution, new insights formed in his mind, connections between seemingly unrelated facts coalescing into understanding. It's responding to emotional need, he realized, to the threat against people I care about. Carol's expression softened momentarily. The violet light grows stronger through connection. Your bond, with the Cage, with Gaara, it's powering this evolution. Before Naruto could respond, Jessica's platform lifted off, accelerating rapidly as they soared toward Sunagaker and whatever horrors awaited them there. Gaara stood atop the highest point of Sunagaker's defensive wall, arms crossed as he surveyed the unnatural storm gathering on the horizon. 3 days since the impossible had happened, since the sky had torn open to reveal another world layered atop their own, and still the Cage maintained the outward calm that had become his hallmark since shedding Shukaku's influence. But inwardly, uncertainty gnawed at him. The reports from Konoha described phenomena beyond even his considerable experience, dimensional mergers, emotional spectrums, cosmic entities of death itself. And now this storm, unlike any ever recorded in the Land of Wind, bearing down upon his village with ominous purpose. The evacuation of civilians to the inner shelters is complete, Lord Cage, Baki reported. Appearing silently beside his former student, the veteran Jonin's uncovered eye narrowed as he studied the approaching darkness. All combat-capable shinobi are in defensive positions as ordered. And the anomalies? Gaara inquired, his gaze never leaving the horizon. Baki's expression tightened. 3 more reported in the past hour. Locations where our world seems to overlap with another. The research division describes them as dimensional soft points where the barrier between realities is particularly thin. Similar to what Konoha reported, Gaara observed. Are they stable? For now. But they're expanding, especially the one near the old battlefield where you. Baki hesitated, uncomfortable referencing Gaara's death and resurrection during the Akatsuki extraction of Shukaku. Where I died, Gaara finished matter-of-factly. That aligns with the intelligence from Konoha. Places of significant death attract these disturbances. Movement at the edge of He storm caught his attention. Figures emerging from the swirling sand and darkness, walking with unnatural uniformity. Gaara's sand eye, hovering high above the approaching group, transmitted images that made even the stoic Cage tense. Prepare all divisions, he ordered, uncrossing his arms as sand began swirling around him automatically. We have incoming hostiles, including apparently deceased shinobi. Baki stiffened, recognizing the implications. Reanimation jutsu, like during the war. Different, Gaara replied, his sand eye providing increasingly disturbing details. These are black rings that emit energy unlike any chakra I've encountered. And they're led by. He broke off as the sand eye transmitted a final image, a tall figure with long, wild hair, distinctive armor. And a gunby war fan strapped to his back. But most disturbing were the eyes, not the crimson Sharingan or even the ringed Rinnegan, but orbs of burning white light that somehow conveyed malevolence even across vast distances. Madara Uchiha, Baki breathed, disbelief warring with dread in his voice. Alert the allied shinobi forces immediately, Gaara commanded, his sand already forming into his preferred combat platform. And send priority communication to Konoha, specifically to Naruto Uzumaki. Tell them Madara has returned, but, wrong. Corrupted. As Baki departed to carry out his orders, Gaara ascended on his sand platform. Rising high above Sunagaku to meet the approaching threat head-on. Wind whipped around him, carrying the distinctive scent of the desert storm, but underneath it lay something else, something wrong. The smell of graves opened, of decay arrested, of death moving with purpose. The Black Lantern version of Madara halted just beyond effective attack range, his undead army spreading out in tactical formation behind him. When he spoke, his voice carried easily across the distance, amplified by unnatural power. Cage of the sand, he called, white eyes fixing on Gaara with predatory focus. The One-Tail's former vessel. How convenient that you should be my first significant opponent in this new existence. Gaara's expression remained impassive, but his sand roiled in response to his contained emotions. Madara Uchiha, you've fallen even further than before. The Black Lantern's lipless mouth curved in a grotesque approximation of Madara's arrogant smile. Fallen. No, Cage. I have transcended. Death has shown me truths beyond the limited vision of even the Rinnegan. He raised his hand, displaying the black ring that pulsed with corrupt power. This gift from Lord Necron has freed me from the cycle of reincarnation itself. No more dependence on the Edo Tensei's limitations, no more pursuing flawed plans for domination. Now I serve a truly worthy cause, the liberation of all life from its temporary state. You serve nothing but another's will, Gaara replied, his sand forming defensive layers around him. First Zetsu's, now this Necron's. For one who prided himself on independence, you've become remarkably adept at being manipulated. Anger flashed across Madara's death mask face, the black ring flaring in response to the emotion. You understand nothing, child. Necron doesn't manipulate, he reveals. And what he revealed to me about the true nature of the Sharingan, about its connection to the emotional spectrum that powers these rings. The Black Lantern's eyes shifted, the white light briefly receding to reveal what lay beneath. Not the Sharingan or Rinnegan, but something new. A black version of the Sharingan, I.T.S. Tomo patterns flowing with negative energy that seemed to absorb light rather than emit it. The Black Sharingan, Madara announced with terrible pride. The true evolution that Indra's descendants were always meant to achieve. Not the eternal Mangekyo, not the Rinnegan, but eyes that perceive and command death itself. Gaara's sand surged forward in immediate response, instinct warning him not to allow Madara to complete whatever technique those corrupted eyes were preparing. The attack struck with devastating force, encasing the Black Lantern in crushing layers of sand. Sand burial, Gaara intoned, closing his fist to compress the sand with force that would pulverize stone. But from within the compressed sand came laughter, cold, confident, and utterly untroubled. Black energy erupted outward, shattering Gaara's technique and dispersing his sand in all directions. Madara stood unharmed, the black Sharingan spinning lazily in his sunken eye sockets. You cannot kill what is already dead, Cage, he mocked. But I can teach you new definitions of suffering before recruiting you to our cause. With frightening speed, Madara flashed through hand signs. Black fire style. Majestic destroyer flame. The technique that erupted from his mouth was a perverted version of the Uchiha clan's signature jutsu, flames as black as the void between stars that consumed everything they touched. Leaving neither ash nor smoke but simply absence. Where the black fire passed, reality itself seemed to thin, the dimensional boundary weakening further. Gaara's ultimate defense rose automatically, sand hardening into his densest shield. The black flames struck with overwhelming force, and for a moment, the shield held, then began to dissolve, not burning but simply ceasing to exist. Saint as the black energy unmade it at the atomic level. Recognizing the existential threat, Gaara abandoned his direct defense and took to higher altitude, recomposing his sand from untouched particles in the atmosphere. Below, the Black Lantern army began its advance on Sunagaku proper, while Madara pursued Gaara with single-minded focus. Your death will be particularly useful, the Black Lantern called as he ascended. Black energy forming wings reminiscent of Susanoo but composed of pure death essence. A vessel that has already experienced death and return has special properties for Lord Necron's purposes. Gaara's response was another barrage of sand attacks. Spears, claws, crushing waves, each met and dissolved by Madara's black energy. The cage was fighting defensively now, buying time for his village to complete preparations while assessing his opponent's capabilities. And those capabilities were terrifying. Beyond Madara's already formidable techniques from life, the CK ring granted him control over death energy itself. Objects struck by this power didn't merely break but unraveled, their fundamental structure coming apart at levels beyond physical. You begin to understand, Madara observed, easily countering another sand attack. This isn't merely combat, it's ontological negation. The black light unmakes creation itself. As they battled across the sky above Sunagaku, Gaara's analytical mind registered a critical detail. The dimensional soft points Baki had reported were expanding rapidly during the conflict, almost as if Madara's black energy was deliberately weakening reality's structure. He's not just attacking the village, Gaara realized. He's attacking the dimensional boundary itself. This insight prompted a change in strategy. Rather than continuing their aerial duel, Gaara abruptly descended toward one of the largest dimensional anomalies, a shimmering distortion near the village center where Sunagaku seemed to overlap with an alien cityscape of gleaming structures. Madara followed, black energy trailing behind him like wings of negative light. Running to ground, cage. How disappointing. Not running, Gaara replied as he landed beside the dimensional distortion. Positioning. With precise control, he sent his sand not at Madara directly but into the anomaly itself, using it as a conduit to the other universe. Through his sand sense, he perceived something responding on the other side, power unlike anything in his experience, yet somehow complementary to his own. Madara hesitated, the black Sharingan perceiving something that gave even the arrogant Uchiha pause. What are you doing? Gaara didn't answer, his concentration focused on the connection he was forming. His sand, now flowing freely between dimensions, began to glow with an unexpected blue light. Not chakra, but something else entirely. Hope. The emotion had become Gaara's cornerstone since Naruto had changed his path years earlier, transforming him from a weapon of hatred to a leader who protected others. That emotion now resonated with something in the other universe, amplifying and focusing his power in ways he couldn't fully comprehend but instinctively understood how to use. This ends now, he stated, the blue-infused sand surging upward to encase Madara once more. This time, when the black lantern attempted to dissolve it with death energy. The sand resisted, the blue light counteracting the black corruption, creating a stalemate where their powers cancelled each other. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Madara's features. Impossible. The black light consumes all. Not all, Gaara contradicted, pushing more of his will, his hope for his people, his village, his friends, into the sand. Some lights shine even in absolute darkness. The blue energy intensified, forcing Madara back step by step. But even as Gaara gained this momentary advantage, he sensed his power was incomplete, as if he was accessing only a fraction of this blue energy's potential. Madara, recovering from his initial surprise, laughed coldly. Interesting. You've discovered a fragment of the emotional spectrum without proper conduits or training. But a fragment is all it is, cage. The black Sharingan spun faster, and the corruption in Madara's eyes seemed to reach out, targeting the blue light specifically. Let me show you the difference between touching a power and mastering it. With a gesture, Madara unleashed a pulse of black energy that specifically countered the blue light, disrupting its frequency and causing Gaara's sand to falter. The cage staggered, feeling the connection to the blue power abruptly severed. A valiant attempt, Madara acknowledged, advancing once more. But futile. The rings chosen by Necron are complete conduits. Your improvised connection is merely a temporary resonance, easily broken. Gaara prepared for Madara's next attack, knowing his conventional defenses would prove inadequate against the black energy but determined to protect his village regardless of personal cost. Sand swirled around him in a final defensive formation as the black lantern raised his hand for a killing strike. Before it could fall, the sky above them erupted with new energy, a blazing green platform descending at incredible speed, bearing 3 figures. Emerald light formed barriers between Madara and Gaara, while violet energy targeted the black lantern directly. Sorry we're late, Naruto called as he leapt from the platform, the violet Sharingan blazing in his eyes. Had to take the scenic route between dimensions. Relief washed over Gaara's typically stoic features. Your timing is impeccable, as always. Jessica Cruz maintained the platform's descent, her green ring CR. Eating additional constructs to push back the advancing Black Lantern army. Carol Ferris targeted Madara specifically, violet energy forming restraints designed to counter the Black Light's corrupting influence. But Madara was no ordinary Black Lantern. With frightening speed, he evaded Carol's constructs, the Black Sharingan analyzing and predicting her techniques with the same preternatural skill that had made him legendary in life. Ah, the violet light, he observed, studying Carol with cold interest. And a green lantern as well. How convenient that you bring representatives of the emotional spectrum directly to me. His gaze shifted to Naruto, and for the first time, genuine surprise registered on his death mask features. What is this? A Sharingan that channels the violet light? Impossible. Naruto stepped forward, violet energy swirling around him in patterns that mirrored his chakra flow. Not impossible, just unprecedented. The two Sharingan users faced each other across the battlefield, Naruto's eyes blazing with violet energy organized in the three-tomo pattern of the early Sharingan, Madara's corrupted with the black light of death in a more complex design that assembled his eternal Mangekyo but perverted by Necron's influence. You are an abomination, Madara declared, though his tone held more fascination than condemnation. The Sharingan belongs to Indra's descendants alone, and the emotional spectrum requires proper conduits, rings, batteries, entities. Yet here you stand, channeling both through mere flesh. I don't know why this power chose me, Naruto replied honestly. But I know what I'm going to do with it, stop you from hurting any more of my precious people. Madara's laughter echoed across the battlefield. Stop me, child, you've read exactly what Necron required to complete the next phase. The Sharingan that channels life, meeting the Sharingan that channels death, the perfect catalysts for complete dimensional merger. He raised his ring hand toward the sky, and the black energy erupted upward in a pillar of darkness that tore through the fabric of reality itself. Above Sunagaker, the already merged sky shattered further, revealing glimpses of countless other dimensions beyond, some recognizable as parts of Carol and Jessica's universe, others utterly alien. What's he doing? Jessica shouted over the cacophony of reality fracturing. Using the dimensional soft points as leverage, Carol replied, her star sapphire perception allowing her to see the pattern in Madara's actions. He's creating a cascade effect, each breach weakening adjacent points in the dimensional boundary. Gaara joined Naruto, his sand now swirling alongside the violet energy. We need to contain this before it spreads beyond control. Naruto nodded, the violet Sharingan analyzing the expanding breaches with newfound clarity. The fractures follow emotional patterns, they're spreading along lines of shared feeling between dimensions. Places where similar emotions occurred in both worlds are merging first. Then we counter with emotional stability, Carol decided, rising higher to gain a better vantage point. Jessica, create a willpower scaffold around the largest breaches, structure and containment. All reinforce with violet energy to heal the connections. The two lanterns moved into position, their respective colors forming complementary constructs that began stabilizing the fractured sky. But Madara wasn't idle during this respite, the black Sharingan spinning rapidly as he prepared a new technique. Black Genjutsu. Infinite darkness, he intoned. Targeting not individuals but the dimensional boundary itself. The technique was unlike any genjutsu Naruto had previously encountered, rather than affecting minds. It targeted the perception of reality at a fundamental level, making the boundaries between dimensions increasingly permeable to death energy specifically. He's creating a direct conduit between our worlds and Necron's realm, Carol warned, her violet construct straining against the encroaching darkness. If he succeeds, the Black Lanterns won't need individual breaches anymore, they'll be able to manifest anywhere. Naruto understood immediately the existential threat this presented. If Necron gained unfettered access to their merged worlds, nothing would stop the tide of death energy from corrupting everything it touched. The violet Sharingan responded to this realization, evolving once more in response to emotional necessity. The three tomo merged and expanded, forming a new pattern. a triangular arrangement that resembled the early stages of the Mangekyo Sharingan but infused with violet energy rather than the traditional Uchiha red. With this evolution came new perception. Naruto could now see not just emotional connections between individuals but the fundamental emotional resonance of reality itself. The dimensional boundaries weren't merely physical or metaphysical constructs but emotional ones as well, held stable by the collective feelings of all beings within each universe. I see it now, he breathed, understanding flooding through him. The emotional spectrum doesn't just exist within universes, it helps define them. It's part of what separates one reality from another. Acting on intuition guided by his enhanced perception, Naruto formed a series of hand signs, combining traditional shinobi techniques with the emotional channeling he'd learned from observing Carol. Violet energy gathered around him in increasingly complex patterns, resonating with the emotional fabric of both merging worlds. Violet art. Dimensional harmony, he declared, releasing the technique not as an attack but as a stabilizing wave that spread outward from his position. Madara's black genjutsu sought to corrupt and permeate the boundaries between worlds. Naruto's technique reinforced them, not by separating the already merged dimensions, but by harmonizing their emotional frequencies, creating a stable synthesis rather than chaotic overlap. The effect was immediately visible, fractures in the sky beginning to heal, the violent merging slowing to a more measured integration. Jessica and Carol's constructs gained new effectiveness, their respective emotional energies amplified by Naruto's harmonizing wave. Madara observed this counter with narrow-eyed calculation. Impressive adaptation, but ultimately futile. He turned his attention from the sky to the ground beneath them, the black Sharingan focusing on the earth itself. Black earth release. Rising necropolis. The desert floor shuddered, then erupted as the dead of countless generations began clawing their way to the surface, not just recent casualties but bodies buried throughout Sunagaku's long history. Unlike the Black Lanterns who had accompanied Madara, these weren't fully reconstituted and empowered corpses but simpler animated dead, puppeted directly by the Black Sharingan. He's raising every corpse in Suna's vicinity. Gaara realized with horror, his sand moving automatically to create barriers between the emerging dead and the village proper. Not just raising them, Carol added, her violet perception seeing deeper patterns. He's preparing them as vessels, temporary hosts for black rings that haven't yet manifested in this dimension. Even as she spoke, black energy coalesced around the corpses, left hands, forming proto-rings that pulsed with hungry anticipation. Not yet fully formed, these constructs nonetheless began channeling death energy into their unwilling hosts, creating an army of partial black lanterns that advanced toward Sunagaku's walls. We need to stop this at the source, Naruto decided, focusing his attention on Madara directly. Carol, SSICA, continue stabilizing the dimensional boundaries. Gaara and I will handle Madara. The cage nodded in agreement, sand already forming his familiar battle gourd on his back. Just like old times, Naruto. Better. Naruto grinned, violet energy swirling around his hands. Now we're both cage level. They attacked in perfect coordination, Gaara's sand approaching from multiple angles Naruto created shadow clones that surrounded Madara with violet-infused Rasengans. The Black Lantern countered with terrifying efficiency, the corrupted Sharingan allowing him to predict and counter each move almost before it was made. You fight well together, Madara acknowledged, black fire erupting from his hands to counter Gaara's sand while his Susanoo ribs formed a partial cage to deflect Naruto's clones. But you face power beyond mere combat now. The black Sharingan fixed on Naruto with predatory focus. That evolved Sharingan of yours, it doesn't belong to you. You've somehow tapped into power meant for another. Naruto faltered momentarily, the words striking a chord of uncertainty within him. What do you mean? I see the truth now, Madara continued, pressing his psychological advantage while maintaining his physical defense. The violet light hasn't randomly chosen you, it's using you as a substitute for its intended bearer. An Uchiha. Before Naruto could process this claim, Madara launched a direct attack, not physical but a genjutsu specifically calibrated to the violet Sharingan's frequency. Black reflection. Mirror of true self. The technique struck with precision, bypassing Naruto's conventional defenses by targeting the violet energy itself. Suddenly, He found himself in a mindscape unlike any he'd experienced before, not Kurama's cage or conventional genjutsu illusion, but a space between dimensions where emotional energy flowed in visible currents. Across from him stood a mirror that showed not his reflection but a shadowy figure with familiar features, tall and lean, with distinctive hair that immediately identified him as an Uchiha. Though the face remained indistinct, the presence was unmistakable. "Sasuke," Naruto whispered, recognition and confusion warring within him. The mirror rippled, neither confirming nor denying, but Madara's voice echoed around him. The Sharingan evolved through emotional trauma, through love corrupted by loss. The Uchiha's power has always been connected to the emotional spectrum, we simply lack the terminology to understand it. Your friend Sasuke, with his capacity for both profound love and consuming hatred, would be the natural channel for this power, not you. The mirror shifted again, now showing Naruto's own reflection but with the violet energy being steadily extracted from his eyes, flowing toward the shadowy Uchiha figure beside him. "You are merely a temporary vessel," Madara's voice continued. "A placeholder until the true bearer can be found and the power transferred. Why else would you develop a visual ability specific to a bloodline you don't possess?" Doubt crept into Naruto's thoughts, doubt that Madara's genjutsu amplified and focused. Was he truly meant to wield this power? Or was he simply a convenient channel because of his emotional capacity and proximity to the dimensional breach? Would the power eventually seek its proper bearer in Sasuke or another Uchiha? But as the doubt threatened to overwhelm him, another presence made itself known within the mindscape, massive and ancient, yet intimately familiar. "Don't listen to this corpse's manipulation," Kurama growled. The nine-tailed fox's consciousness expanding to fill the dimensional space. "He seeks to undermine your confidence, to make you question the bond you've formed with this new power." The fox's nine tails swept through the illusory environment, disrupting the mirror and revealing the construct for what it was, not truth but targeted deception. "Your strength has always come from connections others thought impossible," Kurama continued, his massive form shrinking and condensing until he stood beside Naruto as a more humanoid manifestation of chakra. "You befriended the monster within you. You reached the unreachable Uchiha. You united shinobi who had warred for generations. Why should bridging dimensions be any different?" The fox's words resonated with something deep within Naruto, not just his conscious mind but the very essence that made him who he was. The violet energy responded, flowing back into his eyes with renewed purpose and clarity. "You're right," Naruto said, strength returning to his voice. "Whether I was the intended bearer or not doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with this power now." With newfound determination, he shattered Madara's genjutsu from within, the violet Sharingan flaring with intensity that forced even the black lantern to shield his corrupted eyes. "Nice try," Naruto said as he fully returned to the physical battlefield. "But I've dealt with better mind games from actual friends." Madara's expression shifted from confidence to wariness as he reassessed his opponent. "You broke my black reflection." "Impossible. The death energy should have consumed your doubts from within." "You're not the first to underestimate him," Gaara commented, taking advantage of Madara's momentary distraction to encase the black lantern's legs in sand infused with blue energy. The hope he'd connected with earlier now focused through his friendship with Naruto. Naruto pressed the advantage, his shadow clones attacking from all directions with increasingly complex applications of the violet energy. Where before he had simply infused his Rasengan with violet light, now he created entirely new techniques, violet chains that bound emotional energy, violet seals that temporarily suppressed the black ring's connection to its power source. Madara fought with the skill and power that had made him legendary, the Black countering most of Naruto's innovations with preternatural anticipation. But unlike their previous encounter during the war, this Naruto wasn't fighting alone against an overwhelming force, he was fighting alongside friends with complementary abilities, each amplifying the other's strengths. Above them, Carol and Jessica continued their work stabilizing the dimensional breaches, their lantern energies creating a framework that prevented further deterioration. Gaara's sand provided both offense and defense, the blue energy he'd connected with making his techniques particularly effective against the death energy Madara wielded. And throughout Sunagaku, the village's shinobi fought against the rising dead with increasing effectiveness as they adapted to this new enemy. Tamari, coordinating the defense of the eastern wall, discovered that her wind techniques could temporarily disrupt the proto-rings when infused with sufficient emotional intent, her natural strategic clarity and determination resonating with the green willpower energy that permeated parts of the merged dimensions. The battle reached its climax when Madara, recognizing that his initial strategy had failed, PTED to target the dimensional soft point directly, to tear it wide enough for Necron himself to manifest. Black Cosmic Release. Death's Doorway, he intoned, the black Sharingan evolving into its final form, a design that resembled the Rinnegan but composed of concentric black circles that absorbed all light that touched them. Reality itself began to warp around this technique, the dimensional boundary thinning to near transparency as Madara forced open a direct portal to Necron's realm. Through this widening gap came a familiar skeletal hand, massive and wreathed in black energy, the Death Entity reaching physically into their dimension. No, Naruto shouted, the violet Sharingan responding to his desperate determination. His eyes evolved once more, the triangular pattern expanding and connecting into a complete Mangekyo-like design that pulsed with violet fire. With this final evolution came complete understanding, not just of emotional connections or dimensional boundaries, but of the nature of the Sharingan itself and its relationship to the emotional spectrum. Knowledge that wasn't his own filled his mind, ancient and profound. The Sharingan wasn't originally from this world. The realization crystallized with perfect clarity. The legendary Dujutsu of the Uchiha clan hadn't evolved naturally within their world but had been introduced, emotional spectrum energy that found its way into their dimension eons ago, merging with human DNA to create a biological conduit for powers that normally required external tools like the lanterns, rings. And now, with the dimensions merging again, that ancient connection was being re-established. Acting on this understanding, Naruto formed a final technique, not destructive but reconstructive, designed to realign what Madara sought to corrupt. Violet Cosmic Art. Boundary Restoration. He called, channeling every ounce of his chakra and emotional energy into the technique. Violet light erupted from his fully evolved Sharingan, targeting the dimensional tear with surgical precision. Rather than merely closing it, the technique restored the natural boundary's integrity, reinforcing it with emotional energy that resonated with both universes, creating a stable interface rather than chaotic merging. Necron's hand, caught halfway through the closing portal, withdrew with evident reluctance. Madara, his connection to his master suddenly restricted, staggered as the black energy fluctuated around him. What have you done? The Black Lantern demanded, genuine alarm in his hollow voice. Restored balance, Naruto answered, the violet Sharingan still blazing despite his evident exhaustion. Not separating our worlds, they're too intertwined for that now, but stabilizing their connection. Controlled merger rather than chaotic collision. Madara assessed this change with the tactical genius that had defined him in both life and death, quickly recognizing that his primary mission had been compromised. With the dimensional boundary reinforced, Necron's direct manifestation would be delayed indefinitely. This is merely a temporary setback, he declared, black energy gathering around him for retreat rather than continued assault. Lord Necron's will transcends dimensional boundaries. There are other catalysts, other vectors for his emergence. Then we'll stop those too, Naruto replied with simple confidence. Madara's lipless mouth curved in a cold smile. Your determination is admirable, if misplaced. But remember this, wielder of the violet Sharingan, you have given us valuable data today. The next encounter will not find us so unprepared for your abilities. With that ominous warning, the Black Lantern rose into the air, black energy forming wings that carried him beyond immediate pursuit. The animated dead throughout Sunagakur simultaneously collapsed, their connection to Madara's controlling influence severed. As the immediate threat receded, Naruto finally allowed himself to acknowledge his exhaustion. Dropping to one knee as the violet Sharingan dimmed to its dormant state. Carol and Jessica descended from their aerial positions, both showing signs of significant power expenditure. That was impressive, Jessica offered, genuine admiration in her voice despite her evident weariness. I've never seen anyone manipulate dimensional boundaries like that without specialized equipment. The violet Sharingan is evolving faster than anticipated, Carol observed, studying Naruto with professional assessment that couldn't quite mask her personal concern. You're developing abilities that should take years to master in days. Gaara approached, dismissing his sand armor as he rejoined his friends. Whatever you did, it worked. The dimensional anomalies throughout Suna have stabilized, they're still there. But no longer expanding. Not just in Suna, Jessica added, checking readings from her ring. I'm getting reports from across both our worlds. The chaotic merger has slowed to a manageable integration. We have time to adapt now. Naruto nodded tiredly, accepting Gaara's offered hand to rise to his feet. But Madara and Necron are still out there, planning their next move. And now they know what I can do. Knowledge works both ways, Carol reminded him. We've learned critical information about their capabilities as well. The Black Sharingan, the Dimensio, Null manipulation techniques, we can prepare countermeasures. Before further discussion could develop, a Suna messenger approached with urgent purpose, bowing respectfully to Gaara. Lord Kazekage, we have an unusual situation at the eastern boundary. One of your siblings requests immediate assistance. Kankuro, Gaara asked, concern touching his normally impassive features. No, Lord Kazekage, Lady Tamari, .. The eastern defensive boundary of Sunagakure had experienced the most extensive overlap with the other dimension, desert sands transitioning abruptly to crystalline formations that Carol identified as belonging to a planet called Odim, home to the Blue Lantern Corps in her universe. Here, Tamari had coordinated the defense against Madara's animated dead, discovering in the Proc. Her unexpected affinity for the emotional energies permeating the merged zones. When Naruto, Gaara, Carol, and Jessica arrived, they found the proud Kunoichi kneeling beside one of the larger crystal formations. Her face uncharacteristically uncertain as she studied her hands now surrounded by a faint blue aura that pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. Tamari, Gaara called, his usual stoic tone softened with brotherly concern. His sister looked up, visible relief crossing her features at the sight of familiar faces. About time you showed up. Something's happening to me. As they approached, Carol immediately recognized the energy signature. The blue light of hope, she said, both surprise and respect in her voice. It's responding to her naturally, without a ring as conduit. Like Naruto with the violet light? Jessica asked, glancing between them with growing understanding. Similar in principle, different in manifestation, Carol confirmed. The blue light of hope is one of the most powerful and pure forces in the emotional spectrum. It typically requires a ring and intensive training to channel effectively. Tamari rose to her feet, the practical Kunoichi, asserting herself despite her evident unease. I don't know about lights or spectrums. I just know that during the battle, when those things were threatening my people, I felt something respond to my determination. Something that made my wind techniques effective against their corruption. Naruto studied her with his violet Sharingan, perceiving the blue energy as it integrated with her Chakra system, differently than his own violet energy, but following similar patterns. It's choosing you, he said with sudden certainty. Like the violet light chose me. But why? Why are our two worlds developing these connections without the usual channels? Perhaps because the usual channels are themselves a technological solution to a more fundamental relationship, Carol suggested thoughtfully. The rings, the batteries, they're tools developed by advanced civilizations to harness energies that existed long before them. She gestured to the crystal formations around them. These are naturally occurring emotional conduits, raw blue energy crystallized into physical form. Odim is saturated with hope energy, just as Zamaron contains natural violet crystals. With our worlds merging, the emotional spectrum is finding natural conduits within your population, individuals whose emotional capacity resonates with specific wavelengths. And I resonate with hope. Tamari sounded skeptical, her usual sardonic nature reasserting itself. I'm not exactly known for my optimistic outlook. Hope isn't optimism, Jessica corrected with unexpected authority. It's determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The certainty that things can improve through action and will. From what I've observed of you coordinating Suna's defenses, that describes you perfectly. Tamari considered this assessment, looking to her brother for his reaction. Gaara's slight nod confirmed Jessica's evaluation. You have always been the one who believed in better possibilities, he said quietly. Even when I was lost to hatred, you maintained hope that someday I might change. A hope that Naruto fulfilled, Temari acknowledged, her gaze shifting to the blonde shinobi. Understanding dawned in her sharp eyes. That's the connection, isn't it? My hope was realized through Naruto's intervention with Gaara. My emotional signature was already linked to his through that shared experience. Carol nodded, impressed by the kunoichi's quick comprehension. The emotional spectrum works through connections, between individuals, between events, between dimensions. What appears as coincidence is often deeper pattern. So what happens now? Temari asked practically, examining the blue energy that continued to flow around her hands. Do I get a fancy ring like the ones you wear? Jessica and Carol exchanged glances. That's complicated, Jessica finally answered. The rings are normally created and distributed by the guardians of each respective core. With the dimensional boundaries in flux, those traditional systems are disrupted. But your natural connection doesn't require a ring, Carol added. Like Naruto, you're channeling the energy directly through your chakra system. It's less controlled but potentially more adaptable than our ring-based approach. Temari absorbed this information with characteristic efficiency, already considering tactical applications. Can I learn to control it? To direct it specifically against these black lanterns? I can help with that, Jessica offered. While I use green light, I've worked closely with blue lanterns in the past. The principles are similar, even if the emotional frequency differs. Naruto watched this exchange with growing understanding, the violet Sharingan revealing connections forming between Jessica and Temari, complementary energies recognizing compatible hosts. Similar patterns had formed between himself and Carol, between himself and Zatanna, and now he recognized the significance of these connections. It's not random, he said. The realization crystallizing. None of this is random. The specific people connecting to specific emotions, the particular locations merging between our worlds, it's all following a pattern we just can't fully see yet. Quote, Gaara, ever perceptive, caught Naruto's meaning immediately. You believe there's intention behind these events. Not just Necron's influence, but something else. I don't know, Naruto admitted. But the violet Sharingan shows me connections that seem too deliberate for mere chance. It's like, we're pieces being moved into position for something larger than either of our worlds understands. Quote, Carol's expression grew troubled at this assessment. If that's true, the question becomes, who or what is directing this cosmic choreography? And to what ultimate purpose? Before anyone could offer theories, Jessica's ring pulsed with urgent communication. Her face paled as she received the message, eyes widening with alarm. We need to return to Konoha immediately, she announced. There's been another major incursion, multiple black lanterns manifesting simultaneously at different locations. And, she hesitated, glancing at Naruto with evident reluctance to deliver bad news. The Hyuga compound is under direct attack. Hinata, Naruto whispered, the name escaping him involuntarily as fear clutched his heart. The violet Sharingan flared in response to his emotions. Almost painfully bright, Gaara immediately took command of the immediate situation. Temari, coordinate with Suna's council to implement our new defensive protocols. Jessica, can your ring transport Naruto and Carol back to Konoha instantly? The Green Lantern nodded. Yes, but the energy expenditure will leave me unable to assist once we arrive. Then I'll accompany them as well, Gaara decided. Suna is stable for now, and if the Hyuga clan is specifically targeted, it suggests Necron is pursuing all Dujutsu users. My abilities may prove useful. As Jessica created a transport construct around them, Naruto's thoughts raced ahead to Konoha, to the Hyuga compound, to Hinata. The violet Sharingan revealed the emotional connection stretching across the distinct between them, a bond of profound affection, respect, and unresolved potential. If Necron was targeting her because of that connection to Naruto, because of her Byakugan, because of what she represented emotionally. The thought was unbearable. Hold on, Hinata, he whispered as Jessica's construct accelerated to impossible speed, crossing vast distances in moments. I'm coming. Behind them, Temari watched their departure with newfound determination, the blue light of hope pulsing stronger around her hands as she turned to organize Sunagaku's defenses. Though she remained outwardly practical and focused, Inwardly a new certainty had taken root, that these connections forming between their worlds, between individuals touched by the emotional spectrum, represented not just challenge but opportunity. Hope, after all, thrived best in moments of greatest darkness. Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.